Rhonda, would you start off uh, with taking roll, please?
Wait.
Here.
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 We're going into a presentation for a joint meeting with the planning commission. Would you like me to go ahead and do their roll call at the same time?
Yes, please.
Gustafson?
Here.
Okay, why don't you guys just go here. Give me your name and say here.
Tom, can you say?
Bridgestein here. Farr here.
Cooper here.
Keelty here.
Okay, well, welcome the Planning Commission and welcome the public and anyone who's watching at home. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight, and we're going to start with a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the Council for the purpose of listening to a summary of the proposed expansion, renovation of the Snowmass Center. So, Jim, are you taking?
Mayor Pro Tem. Can I be recognized, please?
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Melissa, go ahead.
My husband is the attorney for the applicant, so I'm going to recuse myself from this process. But in doing so, I would like to ask my fellow council members if they are willing to have this item moved to the agenda, the end of the agenda for all future times that it comes in front of us.
I don't see any reason why we can't do that.
I don't have a
Everybody
problem
okay
with
with
it.
that?
I don't have a problem, but the planning department, if it's a joint meeting, I don't know if it's.
Not for tonight, but I think for future meetings. just
Yeah,
on
not
here.
tonight,
No,
just
of
the
course,
future
I
stuff.
don't have a problem, just because the planning department, they want to show up at 4 o'clock and they want to be done at a certain time. I don't think it's fair to have them show up at 5:30 and then we're still running late, but
Yeah,
the answer to your question is yes.
thank you. Right, I'm
Okay,
gonna leave.
we'll come and get you, or someone will come and get you.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, Jim, you're gonna take the lead on this?
Brian.
Ryan?
This is-
Brian McNellis for the record. Just wanted to start off just really quickly by saying that this joint meeting is one of the required steps in the PUD process for sketch plan. And so this evening, it's really the applicant's show. It's an opportunity for them to show the conceptual plans for the project. And so because of that, staff is not going to be giving any sort of recommendations or opinions at this point. Staff will be here to answer any questions you have if you want to direct questions to staff. But this is really an opportunity for both the Planning Commission and the Town Council to get a flavor of what is being proposed for the Snowmass Center at this point. Yeah, and with that, I'll just turn it right back over to the council.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, Jordan, who's up from your team?
We'll introduce ourselves for the record. I'm Richard Shaw. I'm a partner of Design Workshop. We've been involved in the planning and early sketch plan design for the Snowmass Center. And
my name is Mike Tunte. I am a project landscape architect and planner for the redevelopment of the Snowmass Center.
Mike, would you spell your last name, please?
It's Tunte.
Thank you.
And here with us are the managing partners for the group that is the owner and operator of the Snowmass Center, Jordan Sarek, and Rob Karen Cross, and also a member of our development team, Ben Gunshaft. So with that introduction, what I would like to do is, in the spirit of a sketch plan, be able to describe what this plan that we have submitted in the sketch plan contains, what the elements we think are important for the community, and to introduce really how the program has evolved and how we think this is highly reflective of what the community may be looking for on this site. So really the first question we have asked ourselves as we've undertaken this plan is, what is the right neighborhood? And the Snowmass Center has had in the past a number of ideas that people have brought forward describing what they think is the right kind of neighborhood. And I want to describe today that we have really relied quite heavily on the community's comprehensive plans. And I say plans because they are in flux, and there have been a number of documents that guide the notion about the Snowmass Center, and we've paid a good deal of attention to those. If you look up here, you'll see a series of photographs of past mayors, and the one on the farthest side, Jack Shush, really looked very heavily to this site to fulfill the early parts of the town's objectives, and that was the idea of self-sufficiency, having the facilities that would serve the community that was here, and that was highly focused on a grocery store, post office, and drugstore. So one of the very first things that occurred after the town's incorporation was the construction of the Snowmass Center to fulfill that need. So what's good about it today? Well, I think we feel very good that the market has both survived and expanded and exists today as a good business, that there are a number of features like restaurants which have really fulfilled the type of land use that was anticipated in the center. We're pleased to have really new stores, not running out all the time to find some essential has been a benefit that we're seeing. Sundance Drug and Liquor, the post office, which has occupied this space and has expressed desire to continue to do that as well as expand it. The sports equipment stores, the cleaner. It's really about those services that have been for the local community. They serve both the tourist, second home, and permanent residential community here in Snowmass. Having said that, the next question is, what would be the benefit from improvement, and what kind of improvements could we see? One of those areas is the approach and arrival, how you get to the center, what the experience looks like. Coming into the entry and service dock has been, I think, an issue for a very long time, and that opportunity is addressed really in this plan as well. There's been a limited amount of consolidation of the transit services. We would love to see the center be more connected, have the opportunity to allow people to find where those services are in the center today. There's been a little bit of a disjointedness, some of it caused by the grades that are occurring here. For example, when you arrive, there's quite a high retaining wall that really offers to block the center itself. There's also, I think, a very substantial positive benefit that can occur with a thoughtful parking and circulation plan. One of the ideas that has occurred in the comprehensive plan over time has been that there be more community gathering spaces, that this might be classified as the main street for Snowmass. And to that degree, there are some street-level pedestrian amenities, but there could be a lot more. And there could be a configuration in which this whole place really takes on the character of a town center, a street-oriented kind of retail and residential mixed-use environment. And with that comes new architecture that picks up a new character, that has a way to express itself to the outside to make a street where no street really exists today. So this redevelopment plan that is contained in our sketch plan, and I'm going to highlight and summarize today, really tries to address many of those ideas. This is a center that has the possibility of accommodating additional elements that make up a neighborhood. So the objective here would be to create a vibrant local serving hub. It would establish a main street. It would bring into the existing program ideas a modest expansion in the commercial services and the addition of residential space that would really be oriented towards permanent residential, some possible second home orientation, and some restricted housing. And with that, we have prepared a series of illustratives that sort of talk about the scale, the mass, the program allocations. And the way we have thought about this area is to take the main street and actually put the second side of the street there. If you look at the center today, and much of the footprint of the center is being thought to be retained. That's not to say it would not be upgraded, remodeled, and many parts of the existing center would undergo a construction effort to improve and change the character and architecture of the center. But fundamentally, the footprint would stay where it is, with the exception that we would move a series of these appendages to the center and try to consolidate that into a more workable and functional center, and particularly look at a way of expanding the center with retail and mixed uses at this end that is currently occupied by the service entry. That would allow us then to bring forward in the center the kind of street environment that I've described, both in the center itself as well as in a new building, which is on the right-hand side of this slide. To accomplish that, one of the things that is quite disruptive about the center today is the multiple levels of parking.
Excuse me, Richard, would you like a pointer, a laser pointer?
Well, actually, I have one, thank you. So in the area here, this section of the street is level with the floor elevations of the center, but the current parking, which is down in this area, is a full 12 to 15 feet below the floor elevations of the center. And we have seen that as an opportunity to take the parking and to allow it to go underneath the upper level, so that there would be a combination of parking related here on the street, that would be surface parking, directly related to the street uses, and then parking that would serve the retail, which would become an open-sided structure below the upper deck. And that idea would allow then for the center to take that space, which is occupied today by surface parking, and find the pedestrian amenities, the community gathering spaces that would be possible in a street concept. So taking the element of this is what the pedestrian would see, this would be the street as it's been defined in this particular sketch plan proposal. And with that, you'll see it's a combination of 2- and 3-story buildings. Typically, you would find at the street level the commercial space, and above that would be residential. So as you think about this, that's how the core portion of the Snowmass Center has been articulated here in the application. And then as you move down further along the street, this is the area that is currently the service entry. We would visualize that having a modest expansion of commercial space, about 5,600 square feet of additional space located in that portion of the center. And what you see on either side is a combination of mixed-use residential space on the left side and proposal for new residential on this far right-hand side of the proposal. So back to the plan view, what the overall proposal would look like is a total of 74,000 square feet of commercial space. And by that, that's a general notion of commercial space being entertainment, retail use, and office. About 143,000 square feet of residential, which translates into 62 residential units, and restricted housing of just under 11,000 square feet. The history at the center has also been supported by the desires and aspirations found in the comprehensive plans. The March 2010 plan speaks very heavily towards the local serving aspects of the Snowmass Center, and it really describes it as a mixed-use center with residential being a legitimate and needed component to what the center neighborhood has. I think we're seeing a very consistent kind of community aspiration as you look at the community comprehensive plan update. Some of the ideas and illustrations that were talked about this last 9 months are shown here, and we think to a large degree many of those ideas are very much on target with what the land use has been proposed. I would have to focus on transit and connectivity to think about the center as one of the important nodes in Snowmass. Of particular importance is connectivity to Town Hall, to the immediate and adjacent neighborhoods, and Base Village. So in thinking about this, we believe that the best way to deal with transit is to use the roundabout entrance, provide a way to have the entrance of the transit system come in at that location, partly because it has the capability to be a good location, partly because it's a very landmark kind of orientation. Have the transit loop, Snowmass bus service, come into the center, and in the area today, which was called the annex, have that portion of the center removed, and in its place, a new bus stop that would allow the full organization of transit, both upslope and downslope transit, to take place there. Why? Because that is an excellent place to service the grocery store, to service the Base Village connections and the neighborhoods, and that space today would be reallocated to another portion of the center, with the bus stop being a place in which transit services can be easily found, understandable, and hugely convenient to the floor elevations that exist. The system would then have a second component to it. There has been, over time, a number of ideas about how connectivity in the community could be put together. This is suggesting at the sketch level that a proposed bridge from Base Village to the area just below the town hall would be an easy connection that would make it possible to go directly to the center. And so in a schematic way, one of the alignments that have been talked about for this proposed bridge has been organized into our thinking about connectivity. So this is a more expanded view, really, of how the lower part of the slide shows Base Village coming across to the point side and then making pedestrian connections across. This is a practical, reasonable way for people to be able to go between these two most high-dense areas in the town of Snowmass. So looking more closely at the idea of how transit would operate, a single loading-unloading point is shown here, shelter being built, having the capability of, at the street level, transit coming directly into the center. There are several trails today that are on the site, and we would visualize accommodating those trails, improving them, and making it possible for the Milton Ranch Trail to continue, particularly around the lower section of the Woodbridge, and then across Assay Hill. And then on the Mountain View Trail, There would be a section of that that would be rerouted, and a trailhead related to the Snowmass Center would be an addition that would make it very accessible to the Mountain View Trail. The almost 11,000 square feet of restricted housing, which has been proposed here, is located on the upper area of the Snowmass Center today. That's an area that we think has some really good potential for restricted housing. This would translate into about 11 units. They would be single-level, flat-type housing units. They have stunning views and really a remarkable relationship to the neighborhood overall. And you look at sort of an illustration of what that would look like, that would become very much part of the remodel of the center and the characters that would make up the street frontage. This is a property that has 18 acres in it, and we're proposing to develop about 8 of those acres. The rest of it can effectively function as open space. I would just highlight that there are 2 areas of particular concern from a critical or primary constraint area. This lower area against Brush Creek is against the creek as well as the road. That's in the impact zone, the Brush Creek impact zone. There are some wetlands there. We are proposing no change in that general vicinity of the center. And then up above that, earlier geologic reports have really indicated that there is a potential for debris flow, which is essentially when heavy rains are occurring, that some of the slope wash from that upper area can move down. We want to mitigate that and have some catchment areas, and those are shown in these 2 general vicinities, so that we can manage drainage, the water that was taking place there, and the debris which is coming from the upper areas above the Snowmass Center. Those are areas that have an important visual characteristic to them. They're very consistent with areas that should not be developed, and of course there's a number of steep slopes in that upper area which we are thinking would retain its open space character. So where would the valuable open space be? It's in the center itself, and it's a different kind of open space, thinking about this as pedestrian and community gathering spaces organized around the window door arrangement that the center would have. Mostly what you see here would take some reorganization of the center itself, which we're prepared to include, and with that would be addressing the important phasing of the center as it would be redeveloped. And while that is a complex question in its own right, we're prepared over the course of the project to organize the construction and the land uses in a way that existing tenants can operate for the most part, and that we would have some reorganization of the center, but at the end of the day, a very different kind of character to what is included in the center, making it a much better local location. So quickly, some of the ideas I talked about in the analysis, which has been documented, deals with the question of slopes, 100-year floodplain, debris flow, rock fall, and mud, the mitigation sites, and where the wetlands on the site are located, which is at the bottom in Brush Creek. So to help clarify how the center would be expanded and how the other neighborhood components incorporated, this is essentially a cross-section that we have today of the existing use. And the proposed mixed-use Main Street would really be possible by taking underground parking and letting that become a new platform in the area that is parking today, and that the combination of commercial and residential buildings would be incorporated in the overall center to make it possible to support the parking need, which is both very much related to the code parking as well as the possibility of the mixed use that's here, you know, simply because the square footage increases, doesn't really create necessarily the same proportion of new parking, because under mixed-use areas, there's an exchange of the uses and their parking demand at various times. So that's how parking, a combination of surface parking and underground parking, would be incorporated for the center. And then the proposal contains underground parking or below-grade parking for the residential uses for the various parcels that are proposed. We have looked a little bit about the nature of what a main street would be. And if you think about the mall, which has an east-west orientation, that means the existing Snowmass Mall, by the time you get around December, particularly during the solstice, is in shadow almost all the time. If you look at the Aspen Mall, it's the same kind of orientation, and that has a northern edge that casts shadows across it. If you look at other examples of town centers, you really understand that when you see this diagram with a three-story building, that we have a very good solar orientation for a main street. And summer, what you see is almost always a case where there's good solar orientation at the areas that would be considered to be public gathering, and the shadow affects what is called parcel 6, and that in the application is this little zone right here. By the time you get to the autumn, the shadow has increased a bit, but certainly during the midday, and particularly during the busiest times for the center, including the afternoon. This is a 1:30 p.m. portrait of it, and at 5 o'clock you see that it's very sunny and is the beneficiary of good sunlight. And at the winter, earlier in the morning you get shadow, but then even during the course of the shortest day of the year, 1 p.m. or 1:30 p.m., you have a good environment for people to be in a street and have good solar access to it. So, in thinking a little bit more about the distribution of the land uses proposed, spoken about the center here with the essentially full remodel of the center, the removal of this small portion of the center now, the expansion and reorganized of the service entrance, and that would occur off of Lower Kearns Road, and the service entrance would be tucked into the upper hillside. So instead of being prominent in the first thing about the arrival, it becomes hidden underground and still serves the tenants extremely well. This is the additional area of commercial space making up the rest of the main street. The area here on parcel 5 is a townhouse style configuration. It has some steepness to the slope along here and is very easily and well served by an upper level of parking with the residential looking down Valley and looking down Brush Creek Road. There is the restricted housing proposed here along the facing of the street and the really exceptional views. And then here at parcel 2 and 4 and parcel 3, these are residential areas. What you're seeing is between 2 and 3 stories down below here at the center, and then a combination of 3 and 4, and even in some circumstance a 4.5-story structure, which is really utilizing the roof space that would be available in a pitched roof to incorporate the residential program. So I think the important area here is the 5,600 square feet of increased commercial, 11 units of restricted. Parcel 2 has 11 residential units proposed, parcel 3, 14, parcel 4, 17, parcel 5, there are 8 units. And the commercial square footage is 14,500 in parcel 6 and 12 residential units. So the uses on the site consolidate the commercial and mixed-use portion next to the main part of the center, and then the sites to the outer areas are connected by pedestrian sidewalks and trails that allow you as a pedestrian to access these various parts. And the center itself, on the roof, this is the existing office area which we are visualizing being retained. And this would be the roof plan. So the spirit of this plan is very much a sketch plan application. We wanted to make as much of quality information available as we could about what is included here. The simple takeaway is it is a proposal here that modestly looks at enlarging the commercial and mixed-use aspects of the Snowmass Center, but has a long way towards improved design, remodel, reorganization, refunction in the center, and is certainly the starting point for very good notions about local serving retail in a Main Street environment, supported by more locally oriented residential units around the existing center. And there are really two applications here for modification. One of them is a height request as permitted in the code under certain circumstances of community benefit. The height standard can be modified, and we have requested that in various ways for various parcels. And what has been requested here is to think about this with a maximum height of 62 feet with a project made up of 2 through 4-story buildings. The second variance request that's incorporated here is a slight modification to areas of greater than 30% slopes. There are, as you can well imagine, the slope above the Snowmass Center continues to steepen, but the side slopes are steeper. They range in the 35 to 40% range, and there are a couple of areas where the corner of the building, in order to lay it more appropriately on the land, would touch in the 30% slope areas. And the second area is the modification of the outfall for the catchment basements to deal with this possibility of a debris flow. And moving the water from that upper area down past the center, there's a little bit of an organization around 30% slopes that we have suggested it would be an appropriate use of that application. So with that, we would be very pleased as the applicants to answer any initial questions you might have about what is contained in the sketch plan application.
Okay, you ready?
Go ahead, Tom.
Very good presentation, thank you, Richard. My question is a couple questions. The proposed bridge that you show coming across the roundabout, what happened to the people mover that we have the foundation in place already up at Base Village? I mean, it seems to me that the connectivity, you talked about the connectivity plan in regards to getting back to Base Village to the center, which is going to be the new Main Street. And we have the foundation for that people mover. For the sake of things, I'm going to call it the new Skittles, okay? All right, even though that's outdated. But I thought that would be a part of this new addition as opposed to a bridge as the connectivity goes. And the reason I say that, because I think parking's still going to be a problem. I could see December 24th through January 1st or 2nd, it's still going to be a mess in the center when the hotel cars come in to drop off guests to get their groceries, and the shuttles do the same thing. Then could we go back to the slide that shows the Main Street for locals, please? Okay, so I assume
is that
this
the
is
slide,
the
Tom?
area?
Yeah.
This is the area that the shuttle's going to be coming in and out of, correct?
Yes.
So then the new Clark's Market entrance is going to be here, not over here?
Well, there are no definite floor plans about it, both of those are logical locations that would allow access into the grocery store. And
But this road is basically going to be for residential now then, you're thinking?
no, we're thinking the circulation pattern continues. There's the lower entrance, and this is a two-way street in between.
Right. That's a
So-
two-way street.
Yes, so both the lower and the upper could still be used. We think there's going to be a switch to make this the primary entrance generally. And that's because the ease of the service level, the ability to turn, the fact that it connects logically to the rest of the town's network of roadways really focus that as the entrance. But you'd be able to come both up valley and down
Well,
valley.
I'm thinking along the lines of, you know, I'm looking at the worst-case scenario, December, even in March, when everybody arrives, they're going to get their groceries, their first day in town, they get their skis. This little roundabout that we're going, is this parking right here in the middle?
Yes.
It almost appears to me that that should be eliminated and there should be a two-lane, so, I don't know, maybe this is just commercial space, but you've got this two-way street coming down for everybody entering from Lower Kearns coming on. I'm trying to eliminate what we've got going on right now, trying to make something better. In my mind, I'm trying to eliminate that. I'm not telling you how to design it, of course. But again, I still would like to see what happened to the people mover from the new Skittles that we have the foundation in already up at Base Village next to Building 7. And now, in the wintertime, this new proposed bridge going across the upper part of the roundabout, I just can't see people walking back to Base Village with their groceries on a snowy night across that bridge. They're all gonna be waiting. We're trying to eliminate vehicles, and that may be either shuttles or hotel vehicles as well, as, you know, trying to make it more pedestrian accessible, correct? I think that's the
Yeah.
point.
I would just share our thinking about this with you. First of all, the ideas about the bridge have actually originated from other sources, but as we come into this, we have looked at what the situation is with the arrival and the unloading of something that would be considered like a Skittles. It's a difficult mechanism to visualize people coming with groceries back and forth in a Skittles-like cabin. I think the second thing that got us thinking about other options or the possibilities, the landing point was always, because of existing features, very high on the site. And when the foundation was constructed at Base Village, this was going to land here on the prow of this ridge. And that is a full 4 stories above the floor plate of the grocery store. So the solution there was not only a Skittles-like lift, but also an elevator core that moved you from the loading platform of the gondola down to the grocery store level. And then, of course, to return back to other parts of the village would be back in the elevator, back up to the top, and then wait and load for the Skittles.
Well, again, I'm using the word Skittles but
Yeah.
I could see a detachable 8-person gondola like we have going up to Elk Camp, which is plenty of room, and it's quick. Because if we go as slow as the Skittle goes, nobody's going to use it. We know that. So we have to have a high speed somewhat, and then your landing area could be right here with the accessibility of getting off and getting right into Main Street. I mean, so that's a possibility. I mean, because that property right there is just down the hill from your original landing area.
Well, the other part of that would be also perfecting the right kind of aerial easements and rights of way to allow a lift to take place, if that were one of the ways in which connectivity
Again,
would
these are
improve.
thoughts, you know, and, you know, what I see right now, to me, on Christmas Eve and through that first crazy week, when everybody arrives, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any relief from the traffic pattern that I see right now. And if the bridge ever does go in, and, you know, we have all the snow that we're all happy with, I can't see a lot of people using that bridge. And how are we going to keep that bridge clean of snow? How are we going to keep people from falling on that bridge?
Well, in the bridge concept, what you think about it as a very effective, good pedestrian way. And just like on a street or a sidewalk, you plow the snow off of it, you allow it to be a means for people to walk conveniently back and forth. And you know, what's really interesting about the Base Village Snowmass Center connectivity is the physical distance is extremely short. It's the somewhat vertical connections up and down that have to be dealt with, and that's the consequence of having a bridge idea instead of just a sidewalk. If you can make a bridge happen across this way, and that becomes a desirable route, the ability to go directly to these services from Base Village is so much easier than an aerial tram, because you have very little vertical to have to climb up and down at either side. It would be plowed just like any of the other sidewalk areas or high pedestrian use areas in this community or others. And you would have such an easier time when you think about that convenience store trip. Think about what you're going to do back and forth between Base Village. The shuttle system improvements are really a must, because someone doing serious grocery shopping without their own car, which we're trying to encourage here, is really going to rely heavily on the transit program that the village already operates. In thinking about this, I'm sure these are topics that we're all going to have opinions about and will want to further discuss, but I felt like in this initial way of thinking about connectivity, a great walking path, a great opportunity to mitigate the elevation, the sense that we have a convenient, no waiting kind of opportunity, and we have none of the operational problems that were fundamentally inherent in the connectivity concepts of the past. The operation of who runs it, how does it run, how do people load it, how does the elevation of this really become an effective way to service where people need to go.
I'll just have two more items, and I don't want to take away from the other council members, but one quick thing on the bridge is that we are at 8,300 feet. People arrive from sea level is an issue of altitude. So to walk across the bridge, we're going to put a bad taste in people's mouth immediately that, oh my gosh, am I that much out of shape? Here I am thinking I'm going to do a ski trip. But that's one thing. And then we'll let other people talk. The other thing is I'm concerned about, first of all, I like the idea of Main Street. I think that's a great idea. And what type of green building, do we have anything in mind? Do we have any kind of solar plan for any of these roofs? Because we have a lot of great exposure here. Okay, so I would like to see some sort of solar involved with as we go forward. But anyway, those are my questions. I'll let some of our council members go on.
Bill?
John?
Oh, John.
Mr. Mayor, I think I was pretty clear in the memo of the purpose of this hearing. And it's really not to have back and forth. It's for all of you to receive this plan. And then you each go to your own respective meetings, which are public hearings, to give your feedback. So I'm going to encourage you to receive their presentation, save your comments for when the Planning Commission convenes and the council convenes, so that all these comments can be on the public record rather than in an informal presentation like it is tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got my wrist slapped.
Bill, any comment or anything?
I think I'll save my comments, thanks.
Okay, and I will do the same. I think there'll be plenty of opportunity to have additional conversation and discussion on this project. And Richard, thank you for your time, for the presentation, and we look forward to anybody on, before I just go through this, anybody on the Planning Commission? Gus?
A question for John. I think that in the past, during the sketch plan stage, if I recollect rightly, and John may correct me if I'm wrong, that this is an opportunity for the town council to give the Planning Commission areas of focus or concern. John, no, not at all. Okay.
That's not correct. That happens at the preliminary.
Shows you how good of a memory I have.
Tom.
Tom?
And
Yeah.
understand, this is only the beginning.
Of course.
A sketch plan. You're to receive the plan today, then go to your corners and review. And that's when you ask all these questions and come up with all your fantastic ideas about how it can be made better. This is an exploratory conversation. Conversation doesn't start till each body convenes to hear it. Sketch plan goes on for quite some time.
Tom?
I will save all my questions for when we're in our respective corners at the advice of council, but I just want to commend Jordan Robb for bringing this forward. This is a very important part of our community, and I appreciate such an ambitious project, who I think will be, once we finish with all our questions and comments, will be a really important part of our community. So thank you.
Okay, so again, thank you, Richard, and thank you,
Thank you
Mike.
very much. Thank you,
And Jordan and your rest of your team. I appreciate all your time, and again, we look forward to seeing this as the detail evolves and having more opportunity to have discussions about it. Thanks very much. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess till we get reorganized.
Do we need to adjourn the joint
We
session?
need, yeah, we probably do. Motion to adjourn the joint session. Tom?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Tom? The Toms and the Toms.
Okay.
Very good. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And next up on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to make a public comment? Okay, Tony, will you grab that mic that's next to Joe, please? And
This here?
Yep.
Okay.
Introduce yourself and you're off.
Okay, for the record, my name is Tony Kronberg, and as you know, over the years, I've come before town council, and I've given a lot of kudos, and I'd like to give a kudos to the recent Balloon Fest that Snowmass just hosted. In all of my years of working up in Snowmass, that has probably been the most successful event of any event that I have ever worked at. As I think most of you know, I do what's called concierge security, and one of my jobs is to direct people, and if they have any questions, how to get from point A to point B. And I have never, ever seen so many families with little kids come and teenagers and whatnot. And I think the council's aware that there's been 2 projects that I hold dear to my heart. And one of them is the construction of a dinosaur swimming pool in Base Village. And I understand that you've got Building 6 coming forward. But after I saw the Balloon Fest, the amount of crowds coming, I just see an untapped market that's already in Base Village. And people are asking, where can we go? What fun kind of things that we could do? And I would just love to be able to say to them, well, there's a dinosaur pool right over there that you can swim in year-round, and it's warm water. So I just wanted to put that out to you. And then the second question I get asked a lot is, how can I get over to the town center to get my groceries? And I would love to be able to say, I think most of you are aware, I've been trying to get a gondola built between Aspen, Brush Creek, the airport, and up to Snowmass. And one of the little connectors that I've worked on for when Base Village was being related with selling to East West was to make sure the inclusion of the aerial easement was in place. And that is in place. And that little bitty place by Brush Creek, that the standards are in place. And I just want to kind of piggyback on what Tom had mentioned earlier about using an aerial form of transportation. And as I've said, I think that Snowmass is probably going to be the leader in the new bold kind of technology to get people safely, no matter where you want to go. If you want to go from the town center to the recreation center down to Brush Creek, that you never have to wait for a gondola. So I just wanted to plant 2 seeds because I know that final decisions have not been made yet on certain things. But with that being said, that I'd like to applaud Snowmass because the amount of little kids that were up here, I was just like, oh my God, there's so many like little kids that I take going cha-ching, 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 because as I said, it's an untapped market. So thank you so much.
Anyone else, public comment? Okay, seeing none, move on to the consent agenda. And
Is
yeah,
it- Go ahead.
we received an email from Tom Kosich, who is on the board for the Metro District, requesting that we delay the approval of the winter parking plan for a couple more weeks while they're working on some negotiation between the Metro District's boards and the owners. I don't have any problem. Does anybody have any problem if we pull that out of the consent agenda and put it back
October 2nd,
October 2nd.
I have no problem with that.
I don't think we have
You
a
have a
choice.
problem or you don't?
No, I have no problem.
Oh.
Okay, so
I don't have a problem, but I just had some questions about, do I just hold on to those?
Or if there's something we can answer tonight, but just so people at home, we won't act on it today and act on it on October 2nd. And I think we can answer any questions in the meantime, certainly.
Okay, because I just made some notes when I was going through it.
good.
Anybody else have questions?
Well, yeah, I did too, but I figured I could wait for a couple of weeks.
Well, I can wait too.
Maybe they, because maybe they'd get answered.
Well, it was more language questions, I think. On page 5, hold on, am I in the right thing?
Oh, of the parking plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
sorry, this new I legislate is really hard to move around. So on page 5, in several of those areas where it's talking about the location, and it says like Two Creeks Lot and Black Saddle, and it says no overnight parking without prior approval. Whose approval?
The town gives approval. So, I mean, honestly, it would likely come from the police department. If they run into an emergency and they need to place a vehicle someplace, we oftentimes will place a vehicle down there.
Okay, it just wasn't really clear to me whose approval, because you talk about Black Saddle and Two Creeks being run by the ski company, and I just think maybe it should be clarified.
It depends on who operates the lot.
Okay, so those lots are operated by the ski company.
Yes.
So in that case, it would be the ski company giving approval.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were talking about the numbered lots, then it would be the town giving the approval.
Exactly.
So then I feel like maybe it should
And
say that.
The base village garage would be the metropolitan district.
All right. Do you understand what I'm saying, Clint?
Mhm.
It's just there's all these different no overnight parking without prior approval. Well, you're talking about 3 different people who are operating these various entities.
Different entities
Right.
control different lots.
Right.
So you think it would be appropriate to identify the entity for each lot?
Right. I mean, it spells out somewhere else, like who's, in charge of the maintenance for each lot. But I think you're saying prior approval. Well, I just don't know who that is.
Okay.
So that was one of them. And then on page 6, when you're talking about, number 12, when it talks about it says the Aspen Ski Company will post signs on Brush Creek Road before Highline Road and at the intersection of Brush Creek and Highway 82 indicating which lots are at their capacity. Have they ever done that? Because as far as I know, it's just the digital signs from the town, and maybe Ann's sitting back there, maybe she wants to comment, but I didn't think it came from Skico.
Ski-Code does, Ann Martin's Public Works Director. Ski-Code does manage the lots, and so they have guest services down there, so they'll tell if those lots are full. And
But there's no signs.
there is some signs, but they don't use those typically. They use it as the management of,
You're talking about those little like sandwich-looking signs?
no, they use those as well.
Okay.
But they, the wayfinding signs actually have a sign below it, at Two Creeks, the rodeo lot, Town Park Station lot, and I think those are the 2. There's placards below it, so it'll say parking and with a little arrow to go there, and there's a placard below, and there's 3 options. They're Velcro things that they're removable, let's put it that way, and they can put them back on. So they have those to use those if they choose. They choose to use it as more of a directing and guest services down there. So the option's available.
Okay, and then what about at Brush Creek and 82?
No,
Because it says at the intersection of Brush Creek and 82.
I'm not aware of anything there.
I'm just saying, it wasn't really clear to me that the Skico was actually doing those things. So if it's in here, then I guess you hold them to it, but I don't really know that they've ever, well, you're saying they could do the one, but I don't know that they've ever done the other one.
I don't have the document in front of me, but I don't know if it's mandated. We can clarify, but I don't know if it's mandated in there or if it just says it's an option too.
It just says, should it appear that the ski area parking lots will be full, the Aspen Ski Company will post.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, it's their obligation. Whether they do or not, I couldn't tell you. But it's certainly their obligation, and the idea is to prevent cars from coming up the hill when there's no place to put a car.
And I know there's that digital sign that, I mean, I don't know who puts that on, that's sometimes out there that says if different things are full or whatever, but.
Right before you get to the roundabout on Brush
Right.
Creek. Yeah, we manage that. We also
So-
do pick and alerts, so it's
Right.
kind of a cooperative effort.
Okay.
on
Well,
this.
maybe if it's a cooperative effort, maybe the
Laying it
language should
out.
be changed a little bit. But I'm just saying, it just wasn't clear to me that it's
Yeah.
the Skico doing those things.
We can take a look at it.
That was that one. And then, back to page 5.
And when you're saying 5, you mean on red number 19 is 69?
Yeah, I'm sorry, this new format is like really hard. I think everyone's been struggling with it. Yes, page 5 is also page 19. Yeah, so page 5/19, number 3, when it says ASC is limited to 150 applications for the town's employee parking access. What does that mean?
That, because we sell different kinds of permits, and they're only allowed to buy 150 permits for the numbered lots.
For the employee lots, which I think are 1 through 3 and 10 through 13.
But isn't the Black Saddle supposed to be employee parking?
That too. But
Nope.
it's Black Saddle plus these is what they're allowed to have.
Okay. Okay. And then on page, where is it? Page 3/17, on 1A, where it says traffic volume level of service. I think it should be like traffic volume / level of service. You're talking about two different things, right? I mean, it didn't make sense to me. Traffic volume level of service.
Well, there's different kinds of level of service. I don't know where you're at exactly.
So it says 1A, where it says, it's in
Yeah.
bold, traffic volume level of service.
Right. I guess it would be traffic level of service or
Yeah, it just sounded weird. I just didn't.
levels of service measure lots of different things to engineers. This is the traffic volume level of service.
Okay.
Is what we're trying to measure here.
It just sounded weird to me. And then my only other thing was on page, hold on, page 4/17. When you're talking about the permit prices, that section, there's like so much detail because you're talking about all these different lots and all these different prices. It would be nice if you could kind of like break it out how you do on the other one where it talks about location and user group allowed, because it's really hard to read. I'm just saying for the future. It's just like, it's confusing when you're trying to look at you know what I'm saying?
You're talking about D under
I'm
permit
talking
prices?
about D, where it says permit prices under D. It's like there's so much information in there, and I like how in E, how it's laid out, because then you're like, oh, this is who controls, this is what this lot is, and this is how much it costs. It just is like a mishmash. There's a lot of content in that paragraph, and it's kind of hard to see it all. But that was just like it was just annoying me, so I was just letting you know. That's it.
Thank you. Bill? Any questions on the agreement for clarification or?
No, I mean, I guess the biggest question is, no, I'm gonna leave it at that.
I as well. I'm gonna wait till it come back around.
Okay, so, we're all in agreement, we're gonna pull the winter parking plan from the
Consent.
consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of moving the parking plan back to the new date.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So now we're coming up to resolution number 32, a series of 2017. A resolution acting on the applicant's requested subdivision exemption to adjust the common lot line between Lot 1, Base Village, and the Leichenhart property.
Take it away, Jen.
Jim, you want to give us a little background, kick this off, please?
Just a brief one. This particular application, as mentioned, is a subdivision exemption for a lot line adjustment. And there are 4 things that are allowed by subdivision exemption under the municipal code. And 2 of the items are applicable in this particular case. One is the lot line adjustment between the common lot line between Lot 1 Base Village and the Leichenhart property. And the other one is to convey title. So the applicant proposes to exchange properties of an equal amount, 1,480 square feet approximately, between the two property lines, kind of evening out the property line arrangement a little bit, as well as also correcting a previous offset error in the east property line that's shared between both properties. And that's a quick summary of what's proposed. I think they meet the review standards in the code. Staff's recommending approval of the related ordinance or resolution in this case. And Joe Kraybacher is here to represent the applicant.
Hi, Joe. Welcome.
Thank you. Joe Kraybacher representing today SV Land Holding, current entity that owns Title II, Lot 1 Base Village. Michael Hoffman is here. He's the attorney for the Leichenhearth Condominium Association.
Okay. I know when I was trying to go through this, when I was going through this, it was kind of confusing to me. Seems like there's a few different moving parts. And it was also because we only had the small, we had the drawings, very small. It was hard to sort out the pieces that were being moved and where the easements were, et cetera. So could you take a few minutes and try to help us to better understand where those pieces are and how this exchange of property is working out, please?
Sure. So the on the screen are the same documents that are in the application. I just thought it would be helpful to walk through this. It is fairly convoluted, although the objective is fairly straightforward. So this started with the requirements in the ordinance on Base Village to complete the off-site easement connections for Snowmass water and sand. So that's kind of how it started. And there were several segments of those easements that were required to be granted by the Leichenhearth Condominium Association, even though the infrastructure had already been installed. As you may recall, the easements had never been granted. So we met with the condominium association, and they expressed a desire to basically square out their lot line, and unfortunately didn't really have a lot of title or survey work on their property. So we did a bunch of title work on it. We did a survey, and the survey disclosed some discrepancies in the locations of the lot lines. So that's the background on it. In terms of this particular first exhibit, this is just an exhibit that shows the existing Lot 1 Base Village. And here, you have, what is that, Hayden? And, Ski Hill's up here. This is the bottom of the Skittles lift as it goes up toward the mall. And Leichenhearth is located over here. You'll see there's kind of a strange little point here that comes out of Lot 1 Base Village, and that's the subject of the lot line adjustment.
Okay.
And basically to square that off. So then the trade parcel, but we'll get there, is up here. So Leichenhearth is going to give Base Village Lot 1 a piece up here equal to the size of the triangle down here. And the concept there is to keep all the parameters consistent on Lot 1 of Base Village, because it's has FAR and so on and so forth. Leichenhearth is still zoned under the kind of holding category of the SPA 1 zoning. So they don't have a floor area that's established. They haven't been required to do a PUD yet. If they ever redevelop, that may be what happens. So this next slide shows a outline of the Leichenhearth parcel, and you can see right here, here's the triangle that's jotted out, just jogged out of it. That's largely right in, there's their pool right there. One would expect, as you look at the site there, that it's part of their property, but it's not. It's a very flat area for the most part out here. So the idea was just to straighten this line here and give a chunk up here to equalize the two pieces.
Does that pretty much straighten that line up on the upper piece as well?
It's close.
Yeah.
It doesn't come, it still jogs out a bit because it only took a portion like over here to equalize the square footage. Leichenharth had a unique history because originally only the buildings had footprints and, you know, some associated areas with them. Subsequently, that was because of the old West Village platting and, you know, how the developer happened to do that. And, you know, it set up the West Village Association, which became the Snowmass Resort Association, also known as Snowmass Village Resort Association, was really kind of a homeowners association in some sense. But, you know, it also had assessment powers and so on. As you may know, it's come and gone, it's been dissolved, and in connection with that, it conveyed out parcels. But anyway, so over time, like originally, the pool was not part of Leichenharth. So at some point in the past, the pool gets conveyed to Leichenharth.
Joe, is that, excuse me for a second, is that an easement, like a ski easement over to the Willows there, that
This
long
here?
one? Yes.
That is a ski easement, yeah,
Okay.
along the edge, yeah. So then, you know, subsequently, other pieces, basically what would call the yards, were added. And that resulted in this subdivision plat that is, I think, this is the one from 1999. So that's basically the current configuration of the Leichenharth parcel. This is just a detail on the triangle. So when we had the survey done, you know, West Village has had a lot of discrepancies in terms of, you know, where the lots are. Some of them are a little out of phase. As I understand from the surveyors, it's primarily due to some, you know, kind of arcane, how they tie back some original point that's way out here to the property. And so basically, what this shows is what Base Village shows as its, what this line here and this crosshatch shows is what Base Village assumed the parcel was. And then there's an overlap because it's out of phase. So part of this overlap is an inconsistency between the Base Village plat, which says it owns the overlap, and the Leichenharth plat, which says it owns the overlap. Long story short, we're going to clean up all the gaps and overlaps as part of the process here. This also shows a gap area that, you know, kind of continue. Here's the edge of the triangle. It continues actually up the whole side and into here. This is the parcel that Base Village Lot 1 will give up to Leichenharth. And this is our plat. Yeah, fairly complicated for the most part. But over here, you can see the gap down here, the overlap that goes up here, the two exchange parcels. This will fix basically this lot line as it goes along here. It's not intended to address this lot line between Stonebridge and Leichenharth, not intended to address this lot line of Leichenharth on lower carriageway. It's just these two here. Meantime, we did get all the easements done. It was a little convoluted because we have different segments that go across the gap or the overlaps and so on.
Excuse me, Joe, can I just
So that's
try to
kind of
finish up
that's
one side, one piece of this, which is the lot line and the exchange,
right, okay.
okay? So,
Would you like to see the plat?
yeah, let's go to that, yeah, go to there. So, this is gonna correct the out of phase, for one thing, right?
Right.
And then it's going to exchange two pieces of property to straighten out, to create a straighter lot line for Leichenharth along that one area, and balance off that upper corner somewhat for the ski company, or for the Base Village owner.
Right.
Okay, before we get into the,
Well, then there's one other little piece that
Okay.
we're adding here. Maybe easier for me to go up here than, you know, shake around. So this will be the new final lot line as it comes down like.
You need to.
Yeah,
No,
Joe,
They can't hear you.
they
Joe.
can't hear you.
You can
You know what, grab
take that
that
thing.
mic.
On the
The one on,
podium.
the one on the,
On the podium,
on the podium.
right behind you.
No, just use this. Just let the meeting go, he's got.
Okay, we'll start again, so I lost the mic there. So, our final configuration will be that the lot line will be here.
Right.
We get this piece.
We being
Uh,
Base Village.
Base Village gets this piece. The gap goes to Leichenharth.
Okay.
The overlap, this gap goes to Leichenharth. The overlap is resolved. So basically, we end up with a lot line that goes approximately like so.
Got it.
Okay, and then the other little piece that that we're cleaning up here is Leichenharth has graciously agreed to grant a segment here that goes down to, there's some, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, there's a set of stairs and kind of a walkway to get down to Base Village. So they've agreed to grant a segment for a pedestrian trail. Concept being that this then aligns with the pedestrian circulation plan.
Yeah, with the ski easement in and out of there.
Right. I will say that it doesn't complete it. There's a segment from here to approximately here that Stonebridge would be, should be asked for. Stonebridge has been very easy to deal with in terms of, you know, giving us the easements that we needed on Stonebridge, because some of these sewer easements continue up the hill. But anyway, this is an alignment. There was a series of options that were provided by town staff in terms of the alignment for the pedestrian trail. This was the one that Leichenharth preferred. There were other ones that took it up by the pool, which didn't make sense to them. So this basically helps hug the lot line and utilizes the existing steel stairs that are in place.
Joe, where's the water and sand easement there while you're standing there?
So there's a water and sand easement that's here. It's this wider portion here that comes up, connects to a segment that's on Stonebridge. There's also one down here, which connects to Lower Carriage Way. And those are the two primary easements that were needed from Leichenharth.
So, but do we have a letter from Water and Sand?
Yes, Water and Sand's already signed off on all the easements. The way we did it, we had to have that done as part of the approvals in 2016, and it was a condition of getting the sale completed. So that all got completed, was accepted by Snowmass, Water and Sand, and this is more cleanup. Although we are going to show on this plat those easements. So there'll be a plat out there. Somebody doesn't have to go and try and figure it out from, put the segments together from the actual written easements that are recorded.
So the pedestrian easement, though, that is an agreed upon easement with Leichenharth?
Yes.
And so the metal stairway that kind of goes out to kind of nowhere, right? It goes in the middle of that grassy field or the snow during the winter.
It lands close to the gate. There's a gate that you drop down into Lot 1, Base Village, and it drops down fairly close to that. But you're right, there's a segment there where you're just walking on snow or walking on lawn in the summer.
Mm-hmm. And has the Leichenharth showed an interest in connecting that piece?
Well, I don't think they need to connect it. Lot 1 Base Village comes up to that point. The piece that's missing, if I can go back, I'll go back up to the board here. This is basically part of, actually, this piece comes across this portion, slightly outside of Lot 1. And I can't say I have it handy, but I'm pretty sure that parcel is been granted by SKICO. Jim may know better. But Brush Creek Land Company
owns this, although there is a deed, and Michael can certainly comment on this if he wants. There was a deed from, I think, 2012 when SRA liquidated. The deed actually goes way down like this and takes a big chunk out of Base Village. However, it's just a quitclaim deed. And so there's still some outstanding issue as to whether or not Brush Creek Land Company owns this area. Of course, you have a bunch of the facilities associated with the Skittles lift located here, or whether Leichenharth got anything in this conveyance from 2012. But it was kind of beyond our scope to try and resolve a title issue between Brush Creek Land Company and Leichenharth. But the concept is, this gets you down to the gate where you can walk down the steps and into Base Village, and then brings you up here to this point. There is an easement that comes to this point, comes down here to this point, so the segment that's missing is along here. And it's on Stonebridge property.
And there's a sidewalk that's existing along that edge now on their property. And I think the other option was a diagonal from that stairwell over to that point where Stonebridge previously granted the trail easement. Where, like Joe said, there was more of a direct shot over to the Benedict Trail and then back up. I think Leichenharth was only willing to grant this, and I think we were in favor of it because at least it connected up to an existing walkway. Even though this diagonal connection is pretty much, it's flat, but it kind of goes uphill slightly on the ski back
Jim,
area.
my pointer, that's exactly what we just did several weeks ago with the Willows, the hot tub right there. Okay, so that's, that walkway goes right down there to Brush Creek, and the Willows came in here
Right.
next to F building there, and they wanted that hot tub, so that's all part of that same pedestrian easement.
Yeah, there's already an easement for this Benedict Trail. That's on the Leichenharth property too, on the west end.
It's my understanding that your connection on, your connection comes back up here, and then that goes, you end up basically on Lower Carriage Way and able to go the rest of the distance. I would also note that this has got a ski easement that already comes down through here. So to the extent that you are asking Stonebridge to grant a pedestrian easement, there's already a ski easement. And like I say, they've been frankly very easy to work with, and I think if someone contacted them, they'd probably grant the rest of the segment. And when that segment is all completed, it's my understanding under the subdivision improvements agreement, then that triggers the obligation. That triggers the obligation of the current developer to actually install the trail. But as Jim mentioned, we set this up because there's an existing sidewalk that comes down here, and then it was just the most logical place to put it, and Leichenharth objected to having something diagonal across their property or jut out toward the pool and down.
And just for clarification, that ski back easement, I think that was granted way back in the 60s. But that walkway is not on Leichenharth's property. That ski back easement is on Leichenharth property, but the walkway would be just bordering the Stonebridge.
Yeah, the ski easement's on both Leichenharth and Stonebridge.
So it
as I
splits?
understand, right.
Oh, but most of it's on Leichenharth.
Yeah, the ski easement itself.
Yeah.
But I think in the interest of connectivity, I think we should be looking at how to bridge that gap between that metal staircase and the pedestrian easement that comes across.
We've had discussions on that before as far as how to improve it, whether it should be a hard surface or because it's a ski back trail, maybe it should just be a soft surface, or maybe perhaps just leave it as a grassy area. That's what it is now, because not that many people traverse it.
I mean, just to Councilor Mattson's point, if I recall correctly, once that legal connection's made, then there's an obligation for Base Village to make the physical connection. Is that correct? So I think what Councilor Matson's saying is we need to work to make sure that legal connection's made, so then we can fulfill the obligation for the physical connection by now east-west.
Right.
Because as I understand, the way I read the subdivision improvements agreement, the town has the obligation to get, quote, off-site easements to complete the pedestrian connections. But again, I found Stonebridge folks to be very easy to work with. And what they would be granting is something where there's already a ski easement. It's just not full year access. Although people use it all the time. If you go out there in the summer, you can see the path where people
Right.
walk over the Leichenharth property.
So, just on that same vein, maybe to tie the ends up,
Yeah.
are we in agreement that, to direct staff to move forward with trying to get the easement on the remainder of that, property?
You bet.
Okay.
We'll work towards that, but that's a little different than tonight's action.
Correct.
Tonight's action will help us,
Yes.
will be that,
It might be easier to get that easement if Stonebridge Condos came in with a land use application of some sort. Then that might be easier for us to obtain versus standalone, as a standalone request. But,
Well, we can't force them to bring in a land use
well,
Okay.
But we can encourage them to, based on connectivity,
Right,
and I think
based
that's
on
the most
connectivity, that's
important
correct.
thing. It is being used right now. In the winter, it's different because it is at a slight angle, so it can be tricky for some people.
Well, and I would say that the legal argument for them to do it would be, people are using it anyway, and there's no easement there. So if somebody gets injured, it's one thing. If you have an easement that's been granted to the town, then you've got some protection from the statutory immunity. And so, in fact, that was part of the reason why Leichenharth liked the idea of granting the easement, because they know people are crossing the property anyway.
Okay,
Thank you.
Good idea. Any other questions for Joe? So, should we look through the resolution, see if there are any questions on the resolution itself? Let's do it, page by page. So, first page, the whereases up to line 43.
Councilman Circuit?
Yes.
Were you gonna take public comment? I didn't,
It's technically not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing, but,
oh, is that right?
Michael, I mean, do you have something to add as
Not
a
particularly.
Leichenharth perspective?
Yeah, just that we support the application. We aren't a co-applicant, but that's because of, Related agreed to prosecute the entire application. They were very helpful. I have to say, it was an incredibly tedious negotiation. I was brought in January of 2016, and it took us a whole year to work out the details. And Bob, the questions you were asking, those didn't come to light in one step.
Yeah, I kind of had that feeling.
Multiple steps and multiple surveys. And Joe and I tested each other's patience a few times, but finally got it done, and we appreciate his efforts and his two clients' efforts. And just for your background, the smoothing out of that property boundary was a goal of the Leichenharth for many years, and it so happened that an opportunity presented itself.
Well,
Councilman Madsen, I wanted to make sure that you understood that the Leichenharth was asked. We weren't obligated to agree to the easement. We were given three options, and we chose the option that's shown on the plat. So, and it reaches the Leichenharth property boundary, and where it goes from there is apparently a matter for the town and Stonebridge to decide.
We'll work on it.
Thank you. And I really my thanks to both of you and to your respective organizations for muscling through this, because just looking at it on a map, it looks so much cleaner in this configuration, in this new configuration, than it did previously. So again, nice work. Thank you. Okay, back on the resolution. Anything on the first page?
I have nothing.
I guess line 1, there's a typo, the LLS should be LLC.
LLS is,
Well, I don't know, I was thinking of SST or something at the time, but I think
on line
Joe
12?
Yeah, line
Line
12, and Joe pointed that out.
Okay. We can fix that, I'm sure. Page 2, lines 44 to 85, encompassing the findings. Any questions?
Questions?
No.
Okay. And page 3,
Questions?
no questions. Any questions or concerns on the exhibits, any of the pictures on the exhibits? So we're up to the easement from August 15th on 2003, page 3469. I mean, these are just, these, I guess, are the older, documents that relate to the property.
Well, and those weren't intended to be included as exhibits to the resolution, although if council wanted them to, we could add them.
Exhibit A is only 3 pages.
Exhibit A is only, oh, I see, 1 of 3. I didn't notice that before, okay.
The rest of those are just supporting documents so that you could understand the back.
Fine. So, we're just talking about the 3 pages of Exhibit A and the, I think, 4 pages, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of the resolution body. Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to approve resolution number 32, series 2017.
I'm going to second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, then it's a go. Thank you very much.
Guys.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Next up is a review of the marijuana legalization community feedback tool.
Actually, I think it's building 6 is next.
6 is next up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Review and approval of the format to request letters of interest for Building 6.
This is an ongoing issue. At the last council meeting, the council received a presentation from ACES, where ACES informed us that they would not be able to take the lead role going forward with that building. As a little bit of background, obviously in December 21st, 2015, the town accepted the dedication of the future Building 6. We worked with a number of organizations to occupy it and fill the building. ACES was the organization we were working with most closely up until 2 weeks back. When we received that news, the council gave staff direction to come up with a way to process Plan B. Over the last couple of weeks, I'm hitting buttons, sorry. We've developed what we call a request for letter of interest. The idea being that we would like to open up the process for people to provide the town ideas. At one point, we talked about an RFP or an RFQ, kind of a more formal process, request for proposals or request for qualifications. We thought it would be a decent idea to simplify it and allow people to just offer up ideas. And so we went with this letter of interest kind of concept. If the council is accepting of this idea, what we need tonight is some deadlines and some dates that you think you'd like to get the input back, and maybe if you wanted to discuss further how we wanted to process these LOIs. But what we've got before you for consideration is a format that we hope to put out on the web, email different folks, get it out, and so folks understand that we're looking for these LOIs from different organizations. With that, I'll leave it to the council to ask questions, but this is really an outcome of the last meeting, where we're at, and hoping to find interested parties out in the community who would like to partner with us to bring vitality to the base village area, and specifically Building 6.
Okay, before we get into the actual, to the conversation about the document that you've put together, Clint, will you give us an update on your discussions relative to delaying or halting the construction of the building until we sort out who is going to be in it and what their needs are?
I mean, I don't have much of an update. We met with ACES on Tuesday. The following day, we had a meeting already set with East-West Partners. In short, they said it'd be exceptionally difficult to stop construction of Building 6, because as you recall, Building 6 kind of acts as a wall for the plaza. Its construction is intimate with the plaza construction. It's not that it couldn't be done, but it'd be exceptionally difficult. They expressed concern that if 6 wasn't completed, if 7 and 8 were to go forward, it would make even 6 even harder to construct because of cranes and different operational issues. And so, why it wasn't a no, that can't happen, it was high levels of concern were presented about the constructability if it was delayed. Again, that's really the feedback we got at that point.
Well, okay, I mean, that's what you have, so.
It would make it
Yeah, I
difficult.
think-
And I can say, I think without, speaking out of school, they recommended against it, whether that's a objective thought or not, but they were definitely concerned about affecting the constructability.
Well, I just would like to, I guess, ask my fellow counselors to be aware of that and recognize that the design of this building was designed for a particular purpose, and that at this point, we don't know if that purpose will come to fruition or not. So just as we talk through the,
Okay.
this letter of interest and the timing, I think that it would be important to keep in mind.
One thing I want to make sure we have clear is that Snowmass Discovery was appointed to basically lead this effort, right? They brought in ACES to lead the charge. I don't believe we ever got to the point where we said Snowmass Discovery has lost this opportunity, right? ACES came in and said they would not be able to be the lead, but Snowmass Discovery hasn't had the opportunity taken away from them.
I don't know about that, because I had asked Clint, when was the Discovery Center out of the picture? And you guys told me it was out of the picture.
Well, I think what we're trying to say is ACES was the lead.
Right.
ACES is the one we knew we had a high level of confidence in being able to fulfill the mission, or as defined. And we haven't since talked to Discovery. I mean, I think the beauty, if I might, for this process is let's make sure that Snowmass Discovery, can do it, that they have a confidence that they can do it. Let's let them, this simple couple-page letter with a couple ideas saying, here's how they'd like to proceed, to give a level of confidence for you all. I don't think anybody would be precluded from this. When I talked to East-West in that meeting on Wednesday that I just referred to, I would expect them to submit a few ideas and say, hey, here's 2 or 3 things we're thinking about that might work in there, and then let everybody consider those ideas that are out there. But I'm not sure that you guys, and this can be modified any way you want, but I think that this does is lets everybody, all the ideas flow forward, and then you guys can evaluate them. And I don't know that I can answer your question, Councilor Mattson, about whether they're in or out. We certainly were hoping that ACES could take the lead. Now that they can't, I think we let everybody see who can, and even if somebody can't take the lead, this is an opportunity for us to say who wants to play and who wants to actually do something. Maybe we can come up with a series of partnerships that can work together. I'm hoping ACES will say something in this. Will give us a short letter too, saying they're interested in participating somehow.
What point did we say, okay, we're going to open this up to an RFP because Snowmass Discovery no longer is the primary lead?
And honestly, I think I took that from the last meeting when ACES said they couldn't, and then the question came up, well, what next? And as I recall, it was at the end of the meeting, and there was kind of a punt, and I said, we'll figure something out. and this is our chance, this is our effort at figuring something out.
I think, my opinion, Bill, when ACES came forward to review, the lead and potentially be the lead, in my mind, that at that point in time eliminated the need to do an RFP, because Discovery, up to that point in time, had not proven that they had, and to my mind, had not proven that they had the ability and the wherewithal, and the horsepower to get it done.
Well, I think that was the opinion of probably 2 of the 5 people that sat here. So I don't think there was a formal
No, I agree with you. I don't think there was never a formal, even a straw vote, I think, in that regard. But that's just sort of where I landed on it when ACES came out and said they might be interested.
But now, there were a lot of people in attendance in that meeting, and the Discovery people were here, and a few of them actually spoke, John and Tom.
You're talking about the meeting a couple weeks ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the impression from any of the people that spoke out for the Discovery Center that they wanted to go another step forward. Did you?
Wait, you didn't get the impression from
I didn't get the impression that they weren't getting any financial backing. So they had their hands tied, obviously, that they couldn't go forward. That was my impression of, nobody came forward. Everybody testified about the wonderful Children's Museum in Indianapolis, or wherever we were talking about, and nobody put money on the table, saying, by the way, that's great and everything, but nobody put the check up. And in the same token, when John had an opportunity to talk and Tom had an opportunity to talk, they didn't give me the impression that it's not dead yet.
Well, I mean,
We still want to be in the game, so maybe I just took it the wrong way.
Well, I don't think we can assume anything at this point. I mean, that's the group that, we wanted to create to drive this effort. So.
Well, then that comes back to, I think, Clint's point that with this letter of interest, it goes out to anyone and everybody, and what we get back is what we begin to use to try to put pieces together. It would appear to me, all right, it would appear to me that there isn't anyone who's interested in taking the whole thing. Okay, I just don't. I think that ACES was probably our best shot at an organization with reputation, with horsepower, to take the whole thing. And since they felt they were not able to do that, or are uncomfortable doing that, I think now we're in a position where at best we're going to find multiple organizations that are coming together, and we're going to, and somehow we have to figure out how to take care of the entire required financing with a number of different organizations, each bringing a piece of the financial responsibility and a piece of the programmatic responsibility.
But Snowmass Discovery never came to us and said, we can't raise the money, therefore we're gonna have ACES do it.
I think.
They just said, we're gonna bring ACES in to be the lead to generate some more enthusiasm to get behind this thing.
I think that they went to ACES because they recognized that it was too big for them, for Snowmass Discovery.
Well, I think that's your opinion.
Well, it is my opinion, yes.
So, in my mind, it's still their program. It's their opportunity to lose, or they can step back and say, hey, we're not going to be able to do this. Why don't you guys put this out to an RFP process? But in my mind, they're still the lead. I mean, this building was designed to be a discovery center, and until, you know, we come to a formal conclusion that that's not what this building is to be, and we're gonna put it out to an RFP process, I mean, I think we need to make that step first.
Well, I don't think that tonight we would come to a formal conclusion of whether or not to maintain Snowmass Discovery as the primary and sole organization or not, because Madam Mayor is not here. I think that the letter of interest is something that is not the same as a request for proposal. And it allows Discovery, Snowmass Discovery, and anyone else to make to make a proposal as to what they are willing and able to do, which is what you would be asking. It's what I'm interpreting. You would be asking Snowmass Discovery to do.
Yeah, continue on their path, you bet.
Well, how long, again, we get to a time, we're in a time situation here. How long do we give, and that's really what we're talking about. How long do we wait? How long do we give ourselves and the community to find the appropriate organizations, one or many, to go into that building and use it as a community purpose, knowing that it's being constructed for a specific purpose, and that construction is starting in a very short period of time?
Right, I think that a letter of intent, an RFP process distracts from the process. I mean, we have a world-class find, we have a huge opportunity, and I think we're just diluting what the intent is for that building.
Well, okay. Anybody else want to add an opinion?
Alyssa?
You can go ahead first, it's okay.
Well, I still believe, and again, I was surprised when I asked the question weeks ago before the September 5th meeting, when ACES came to tell us that they were out. I didn't know the Discovery Center was out in regards to, it was, as we talked about it, beyond the bones. It was going to be a combination of both. And when it became, the ACES became more of the main theme than the Discovery Center, I was a little surprised. And I was not aware of it. But Bill, I have not seen, in my mind, I have not seen the Discovery Center come forward and say, oh, no, we're still involved. And quite frankly, this has been a public document that's been out here, this letter. Why are they not here tonight to say, we're still in? I don't know what to think on this. I know we have a community purpose building, and I think if there's another option that's out there, somebody should come forward, or we sell it. According to the letter, it's worth $6 million. Or I know the Base Village people want their aqua center. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to design an aqua center the way the building's designed. And I do believe Building 6 is the gateway to the plaza. So we need to have something very good that's going to be in there. Now, I think the building could be built. The shell's going to be handed over to the town. I still believe that the Harry Teague's design is a beautiful design, and it's a nice gateway. So I don't necessarily agree with Bob that we have a very thin timeline here. I think we have time. So whoever's going to come forward, I think they have time to come forward, and let's keep the ball moving.
Melissa?
Well, a couple things. I mean, for me, I feel like obviously I was really behind Discovery. I do think that the building was designed for Discovery. I do think that all of us sitting here took a long time to get to the common ground that we were going to move forward with Discovery. And I don't really want to go back and like hash out all these things that we've already done before. I mean, I think we just kind of need to move forward. That being said, I don't think that Discovery's out. What I think this allows us to do is hear from other people, Discovery being one, because maybe after that evening in which they were all in here and talking about different things, and the ladies from the Children's Museum are, you know, saying how much money they can raise, and some of them are on the board of Discovery and all these things, that maybe they're gonna have some collaborative effort that they're gonna come back with. And I don't think that this is gonna pigeonhole us. I mean, we don't have to accept any of those things. I just think it's letting us work simultaneously. I mean, in my mind, Discovery is still the priority. And I think it should remain the priority, but at the same time, this thing with ACES sort of, you know, set us off on this 6-month track of thinking something was gonna happen and it didn't. And so now we're sort of at this point where ACES is out as a lead, but maybe they're gonna talk with some other people, including Discovery, and come back with something. I feel like we have to put feelers out and sort of move forward. I mean, as far as the building goes, I mean, I don't really feel like it's an option to sell it at this point. I do think that the way that it's set up, it's limiting in terms of it was designed for Discovery, but I don't think that it's impossible. I mean, I think that you could work it out for some, since it is sort of just a white box, as it says. I mean, it's not gonna be ideal for certain people, but it may be ideal for some of these ideas that East West might throw forward or other local nonprofits. But I don't know, it's really hard because I do support Discovery, and I wanna say that I think we should prioritize them, but I kind of feel like we should do this other thing at the same time. I mean, if Discovery comes to us in a month and says, oh my gosh, we had this person just give us $10 million to build this building, or we're able to raise all this money and we want to move forward, then that might be a different thing because we have committed to them. But at the same time, we might get something from some community people that are like, wow, this could be Discovery and climate and fun recreation all in one space. So that's kind of where I stand with it. I mean, I do think that the letter has some things that need to be tweaked on it, obviously. I don't think it's like a perfect document right now, but, you know, and I understand what Marky was saying when she sort of said, well, it's impossible for a nonprofit to be able to give you, you know, all this information in such a short period of time. But we're not asking necessarily for specifics. We're sort of just asking for these like overarching ideas. And I think that is doable for anyone. I mean, if someone, I mean, anyone. I mean, Tony always has ideas. It's like anyone that has an idea could fill out one of these letters and not feel like it's like taking them months to do it.
I agree. More discussion? Or?
I still believe, you know, that I don't think that we have to narrow this down in the next 4 weeks and come up with that decision. I think we're all on the same page. Something could happen in the next few weeks or whatever, but I think I like the building. What I like about the building is, you know, if as I said, as I call it, the gateway to the plaza, even if the doors were open and you walk through and there were bones, but the town's gonna own it. There's gonna be a coffee shop of some sort, or some sort of retail in there. You know, maybe there's somewhat of a theater idea in one section of the building.
That's true.
So I think there's a lot of options, but does the town want to be a landlord, or does the town want to own the building? We're gonna give the rights for 14 years for CAM, so that's going to be paid for.
By the way, that adds to the value of the building.
Right. Okay, so for 14 years, there's going to be, you know, taken care of. The utility bills are going to be taken care of. So that's.
No,
No?
not utility.
But somewhat,
CAM,
right?
CAM.
I mean,
Common area maintenance.
which is a big part of what's going to happen in the building. Okay, now, in regards to the environment of the building, if they're going to have somewhat of a museum and bring in, at one point, the Discovery Center talked about bringing in a Bengal tiger or something or whatever. And that environment's gonna have to be taken care of and thought about when they get into the mechanics of the building. But we're gonna be handed a shell. And I think it's a good-looking shell. Again, I still think could be opened up and could be the gateway to the plaza or whatever. I don't know if we have to make we can't make a decision tonight, Bob, obviously.
Well, no, what we can do, what I hope we will do, at least it sounds to me as if there are three of us who are in agreement that we need to create this letter of interest and give staff, come to some agreement on the time frame to allow responses and give staff direction. That's what I hope we can do. It sounded like, it sounded like at least three of us were going in that direction. Alyssa, I want to just come back to the building for a minute. So the building is worth more than $6 million, in my opinion, because of the CAM, which is another, what is it, $100,000 a year for
It's about $1.4 million, right?
$1.5 million?
They estimated it at 100,000 a year, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's more like $7.5 million. That being said, as you say, the building was designed for a specific purpose. Without that purpose, it may be more difficult to find tenants. Well, that may take that $7.5 million and reduce the value of the building. So we are taking a risk as the elected officials of the town. We are taking a risk that we might be inadvertently, or not even so inadvertently, but we might be devaluing an asset that the town has. Now, I'm off of that, okay? But that has to be out there. Now, to move on to what I think is the appropriate thing to do tonight, and that is look at this letter of interest, discuss, if we need to discuss the individual specifics and go through it for comments, because I also have some thoughts about, things that I'd like to see written slightly differently, and then come up with some idea of a reasonable time frame to give people, to balance two sides of the issue, to give people a reasonable amount of time to think about this and put some ideas on paper, and to balance that off against the clock that's ticking on the construction, and not only the construction of the building, but when we would take occupancy of the building. Because the longer it takes to even figure out who's going to be in there, the less time that group has to raise the money to finish out the inside. And the longer that building potentially sits, hopefully not empty, but not doing what it's being, the long-term design for that building.
And I just to go back to what you're saying about devaluing the building, like I agree, but the problem is that, I don't know, Clint told me today what do you call the stuff that's already in? The footer, the platform,
The plate, the floor plate.
right, is already in. So it's like, to go back and be like, redesign the building and do all these things. And then what if Discovery did come up and say, we can do it,
No, I get it.
Yeah,
I get
that's
it.
the problem.
It's a big problem, and it's a big problem. And I think you're 100% correct. We got to simultaneously work, on this in a number of different directions, and to cover it as best we can. And if we're in agreement, in general, can we start to look at this proposed letter of interest and discuss the things that we would like to have in or out of it.
I think we
Bill?
should, yeah. Just one more comment, though. I think moving forward, to keep the waters clear, in my opinion, we should take selling the building off the table.
Well, it's not on the table tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I don't know if I'm not so sure that I could agree with that, just from what people have told me in the community. So, I don't necessarily, that selling the building is off the table.
No, I'm only saying, Tom, it's off the table tonight.
Tonight it's off the table.
Yeah,
Fine.
that's as far as I can say, because I don't, I think,
It'd be grossly premature to
right.
not gauge interest and say that we're gonna sell.
No, I understand that.
But if you're gauging interest and there's an extreme lack of interest, then perhaps that other option would
Yeah.
open up. But
I mean,
I don't think anybody's asking you tonight to say, we wanna sell the building.
and you might get, I mean, we may get a lot of like amazing ideas, but the feasibility of acting on those ideas might be really slim. So I think it's one of those things. I don't think you can say that it's totally off the table, but I don't think it's part of these discussions.
Yes,
No, it's not
agreed.
part of this discussion. I
Yep.
understand that.
Fair enough. I'm just saying, it's gonna be very difficult to sway me in that direction.
No, I agree. I'm right there with you.
Okay,
Okay.
so, all right. Alyssa, you want to start off with some comments?
Well, should we just, do you want to go section by
Page
section?
by page, section by
Yeah.
section? Okay.
I just had like two sort of comments on the introduction part. Innovative uses of building. So it says for the Building 6 facility within Base Village and Snowmass Village, Colorado. I would say for the Building 6 community purpose facility located in Base Village. I mean, I don't think, you already say the town of Snowmass Village. I mean, I don't, it seemed repetitive. Does that make sense, Clint?
Yeah, and the only reason, honestly, we try to put some of this in English, because I don't know that everybody knows what a community purpose facility is. And we can make those changes, absolutely, but we were really trying to simplify
Well-
some of the language, was some of our goals with this. Whether we hit it or not, there's no pride of authorship here, because I didn't author it, but,
No.
but I'm happy to
Well,
fix it.
Well, it says propose innovative ideas. I mean, you could specifically, I mean, whatever community purpose is supposed to bolster, you could put that in there, like, you know, for the purpose of creating.
If you think it makes it better, I'm all for it. I'm just saying, our goal was to simplify, and if we didn't hit it, fine, and if we want to be more clear with community purpose, yes, we can do that.
Well, wait a second.
But do you limit it?
No, I'm not so sure that we should do that, only because what if somebody comes in with a very interesting idea for using it for commercial space? Now, that wouldn't be a community purpose, but should we not allow that individual to come in and provide us with some ideas?
But if you're not using it for a community purpose space, then don't we have to, I mean, isn't that what it's zoned for?
One of the community purposes is economic development. I mean, I can't go into the detail off my head, but
Yeah.
I mean, there are, if you guys say fundamentally, if you say it's community purpose, the council says it's community purpose,
It is.
then it's community purpose. And John would
again,
give you
I
a lot
don't-
more detail than I just gave you, but that's a
Yeah.
pretty well-rounded.
And I don't know why you'd wanna limit the scope of this really broad net
Right.
that you're sending out. And if it's something that, whatever comes back, there's no way it could be considered a community purpose, whatever it's gonna be. These people haven't gone to this is a letter of interest. This isn't a full-blown, they're not gonna expend a lot of resources on an RFP level of response. And I would just suggest shooting out as broad as you can. And
I get it. I just didn't look at it like that when I read it.
That was our goal. Like I said, whether we hit it or not, couldn't. That's your
Well, I mean, I go with what everybody else thinks, but I don't know. I mean, in my mind, it's a community purpose building. It's there for, I mean, we put those instead of condos like we were talking about earlier and all these things. I mean, the idea is something that's going to draw people in. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you have the ice skating rink there. I mean, not everybody feels like going shopping, but you put something interesting that's different that you're not going to see anywhere else. That's an innovative idea. I mean, but
Perhaps
whatever.
we can
anyone wants to
we can
do.
add something innovative ideas that are, drive vitality in the area. That's kind of what the underlying goal I thought was. But
Drive vitality.
is that helpful or not? No.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever everybody wants to do. That was, I mean, I don't know. I said how I feel, so I don't need to repeat myself 100 times.
Did you said you had another one in the introduction, or was that?
No, that was it for the introduction.
I thought in the introduction, in addition to administer, manage, and operate the use, I think we ought to, I guess I'd like to know what would be necessary for the building infrastructure.
What do you mean?
Now, I know it's their responsibility to build out the building, right? But depending on what a potential organization needs or doesn't need, might help us to determine, if you will, the speed with which somebody could get in there. Now, that shouldn't necessarily be a determining factor, but it should be a contributing factor.
But isn't that in the background in that last paragraph? I mean, that's kind of in that it's talking about construction of building 6, rough finish, tenants expected to have the ultimate responsibility of finishing the facility. I mean, wouldn't you put that in there or no?
I could put it in there too, yeah.
I mean, that just seems like that's sort of giving you
yeah.
the background and what they could expect if they were given this opportunity. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, do you want more than that?
No, that just needs to be in there, so that when somebody sends us a response, that they say something about how they visualize their infrastructure requirement.
You mean finishing the building when you say infrastructure? So the tenant expected to have the ultimate responsibility of finishing the facility to meet their programming needs.
I mean, I think that sentence is weirdly worded anyways. I changed it to, it is expected that the tenant will have the ultimate responsibility of finishing. It just sounded weird to me.
But how you work out the language, Clint, is just trying to get the idea across.
Okay.
Next page. Well, I guess we go down to
Now we're in the basic information.
basic information about the site.
Where, again, it talks about the build out. I mean, it doesn't give a lot of, you see that?
Yeah, well, it says, it just identifies that as the cost of the
Right.
tenant.
Right.
But it's not asking for the tenant the potential tenant to respond at this point.
Right.
I have a suggestion, question on the submission requirements. That second paragraph, because this is only a request, the last phrase, but do not feel obligated to provide information beyond that. I would prefer to take that out and let people, we have said that, tremendous detail is not necessary, please provide enough information, so forth and so on. Let people send as much or as little as they want to send, instead of encouraging them to send less.
Because in the beginning, under the introduction and background, we also said that we need them to create a plan of action. Okay, so we're kind of contradicting what we're asking for in the background.
I mean, again, it's your choice, but our goal was to say, to use John's terms, to cast the biggest net we could or broadest net we could, and so we were just trying to, so we didn't want to.
But if somebody wants to send 2 pages, they'll send 2. And if they want to send 22, they'll send 22.
That's how we hope to write it.
Yeah.
She's saying you just don't need that language.
I just think you don't need the language at all in that last, just
I
end the
agree.
sentence of desire your initial ideas, period.
Right, I mean, all you want is for us to be able to get a feel
Right.
of what it is that your concept is and the feasibility of actually following through on that concept, right?
I mean, yeah, you're asking me, I'm asking you. Is that what you want?
Oh, no, but I'm saying that's what you were saying there. So I agree.
Yes.
I mean, I don't really feel like you need that last that last part of the sentence, but do not feel obligated. I mean,
That's fine.
so are we on that section 1? Is that what we're doing?
Section 1 or section 2? If you have section 1,
I have section 2 question.
Me too. Go ahead.
On that 2.4, it says, describe how you would be willing to partner with other organizations to create a multi-use building. I think I would say something like, if you would be willing to partner with another organization to create a multi-use space, what might this look like? Because, I mean, maybe they're not willing to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, maybe that's not even on their radar. But if they were willing, you know, because they could just simply answer like, we feel like we have this, we wouldn't need another partner.
Yeah.
But if they are willing to partner with another organization to create the multi-use space, what might this look like? That was my comment on that one.
Also, there was an overlap. 2.4 and 3.2 seem to ask the same question. But maybe with that
Yes, I hate
with that
I hate
rewriting,
noted.
maybe they are going in 2 different directions.
Well, but I still had that noted under 3.2. I was like, didn't we already ask this? I mean, I think if you put it in 2.4, I don't think you need it in
You
3.2.
don't need it in 3.2.
I kind of sort of combine those.
Done.
I thought 2.1, it didn't read clearly to me. Maybe there's a word missing, I don't know. What is your proposed use of the building encourages visitors?
It's what in your proposed use. I skipped
what
it too the
in?
first 2 times I read it over. What in your proposed
I read
use?
it as what is.
Right, so did I.
Yeah,
And
what
then I
in?
was like, this doesn't make any
Where's
sense.
visitors?
This is the whole goal of we don't want one and done.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to
Okay.
show us.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
2.6, so we ask them to describe the market. Should we ask them to describe what their target audience you would be as well? Or is that, are we asking, is that just another word for the same thing?
I mean, we thought it was kind of generic, but we can say audience, market. We can put audience/market. That's the point.
Yeah.
Your intent is exactly what we said. Market, you can say audience.
Market/audience, whatever. Okay.
I think the 4.2 is a very good question. Based upon what people pay to get here, I think we need to make sure that, or try to make sure that any fees involved, if there are any fees involved, maybe this could all be free. And, because having a fee to pay to go see the bones, right now, people can walk into the Discovery Center in the mall, and it's a nice experience. They sit on the couch, they can watch the movie or whatever. It's free. And I think that's a very good question, and maybe it needs to be a little bit more forward in the list of questions.
In the same section under financials, it's a little confusing to me because how are they going to know some of this stuff? I mean, how are they going to know the operating and maintenance expenses associated with the building?
I mean, honestly, this was the section that was in when we were kind of drafting RFP. So we brought out a lot of the detail, and if you think it's too much detail, we could reduce it. And if somebody came back and said, we don't know, I think we would still, it's if they know, great. We'd love to know that they
Well,
expect.
I just don't know how anyone would know what all of that is without without providing some sort of stat sheet in the document.
So, there's a couple questions here that, you know, kind of, that are important, and maybe they flow in a certain way. I guess on one hand, we would like to have an idea of what they think their costs would be to finish the building. I guess, I mean, I guess that's what we're at. See, we're asking them how they propose to raise the money, but we don't ask how much money do you think you're going to need. Now, usually, you know, you're going to think about how much money you're going to need first, and then think about how you go about and raise that amount of money. So, do we need to add, you know, what's your estimate of your capital need?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know that anyone that's doing sort of this basic thing could really answer these questions right now. I sort of look at those questions as like the round two.
I mean, yeah, and that's fine. I mean,
That might be.
describe. I mean, the question is describe how you propose to finance capital expenses. They might just say through fundraising, through
Right.
admission fees, through existing fund balance. I mean, we're not or we don't know yet. I mean, we're just trying to.
But I feel like it's a little bit intimidating. Like,
Well,
this
it
is,
depends who you are, I think, right? Because, I mean, if we're looking at the guy who wanted to do the skydiving, you know, in the parking lot down there, say he wanted to take on the building. I mean, he's got to have it laid out as to what he's going to charge, what his hours are going to be,
Right.
you know? So somebody like that, you know, may be able to provide more detail, but I mean, if they don't, I mean, it's fine too. I mean, they may just have a pocket full of cash.
yeah, and maybe it's just kind of like, it's sort of an optional section, because if you're talking about the skydiving guy, it's really different than if you're talking about some person that just had this really great idea, but they don't really have any experience in this yet. You know, they just were like, oh, this would be really awesome for the base village. I mean, I think the thing with the admission fee and all that stuff is good, but then you might be having someone who it has nothing to do with charging admission fees.
Right.
I don't know. It's just it's a weird section. But I don't really know how to deal with it. It's just, I just thought it was strange.
Well, I mean, it was one of those things to say. It was to prove some feasibility, hopefully, to show that they put some thought into it. Isn't going to be, you know, there's going to be ongoing expenses, and it was just to have them put their thoughts down. And they might be as simple as, we're going to borrow the money from the bank, and ongoing revenues will hopefully pay for the debt service. I mean, we weren't or we're going to go and ask fundraisers, or we weren't. For all these questions, if it's we'll put some kind of generic statement at the top of these, kind of in that second paragraph under submission requirements, we can add something that says, please use this as a guideline, but don't feel, you know.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And that's, again, that's the tenor we've been trying to go throughout, but we can make that clear that this is a framework that doesn't need to be followed to the T, kind of thing.
Okay.
Right. I think that's good.
Okay.
And I don't understand what happened at the bottom.
So, evaluation, you mean?
Yeah, it's
Is that
like
what you mean?
missing.
Evaluation
To
committee.
achieve the,
Evaluation committee will review the letters of interest. Committee may work with a variety of organizations who develop the strongest conglomeration of partners to achieve the town's goals.
how do you see that?
How do
Mine
I-
doesn't,
How do I see that?
oh, that is so weird. When I was at home, it wouldn't,
Oh,
it wouldn't advance to the next
Oh,
page.
that's funny.
Now it just did, sorry. I was like, where's the rest of the document?
So this comes,
This is the problem with this new thing, it swipes this way.
I know.
See, Tom's having the everyone's having the problem.
I had Doug in here.
I
We
gotta-
used to
I
go
gotta
in
sta-
vertical, now we're
I gotta
horizontal.
stand mine
Right.
up, because otherwise the
Right.
print's too small.
But I kept swiping and nothing was happening, so I thought it was, because it says, whatever. I see it now, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
I hope Doug is watching on TV.
I hope he's not. I hope he's home enjoying his evening on a bike
Watching
ride or
Monday Night
doing
Football.
something. I hope he's doing something better.
He's a Jets
Or
fan,
Dancing
not-
with the Stars is on, and it's a big
He's
So-
a Jets fan.
Dancing
not
with
a
the
we gotta get
stars,
home.
yes.
So I want to bring something up while we're in this section regarding, you know, a committee, a review committee, recommendation committee, however you want. So, you know, at the last meeting when we discussed this, Madam Mayor suggested some type of a group, which she called a think tank, but it's a committee, to look into these, you know, to review and recommend on these letters of interest. I have a question. How long will it take us? How long will it take us to create this review committee? And what would we, as a council, what would each of us require in order to establish a review committee? And I'm going to throw it out because to me that's an important consideration as to what we do with these letters of interest.
I feel like it's kind of like what we did with the think tank for the
Comp plan.
plan,
For
the
the
comp
comp
plan.
plan?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of sort of that same thing. I mean, what did we do? We put out a thing, people applied, we reviewed them, and we tried to pick a diverse cross section of the community.
Honestly, when we wrote this, we purposely used the very generic term committee because
I wouldn't
the
call
committee,
it-
the committee could be you guys, the committee could be staff, the committee could be combinations of community members, and this is for you guys to determine, however you want to do it. How's that for a punt back?
Well, in my mind, these letters of interest should essentially be the think tank. I mean, what we're asking for is people's opinions, their visions, you know, how they see this thing going forward. I mean, I think we're the committee. I mean, we're gonna have to decide, staff's gonna have to review it.
Well, we are going to need to get public input. One way to do that is to essentially publish these letters of interest. We can send them out in town emails. You know, I'm sure Travis has lots of other ways that we can get, you know, these things for the purpose of getting feedback from the community.
Well, I feel like you need to narrow it down first, because I mean, who knows? I mean, you could get 5 submissions or you could get 50.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you narrowed it down, you know, whether you used a committee or however we're going to do it to narrow it down, and if we really wanted to get people's feedbacks, I mean, you could have it's kind of like a science fair. People set up their proposals, people could come in and go from person to person and kind of learn about what they want to do.
That's an
I
interesting
mean, because I think
idea.
it's a lot, in my opinion, it helps a lot more to go in, like when you go to science fair and you see everyone's, or the mentorship program at the school, and you see what they've done and you actually have an opportunity to ask them questions and blah, 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 I think that helps. And then for people that attend, they could fill something out, or we can get their email and send them an online thing for their feedback, or however we want to do it. You know, or it was kind of like when we did the, those plans, the Parks and Rec and all that stuff, where you went and dropped things in the ones that you liked.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So-
I like that idea. That extends the timeline. Okay. So when we come up to the, you know, to the next area, when we come up to the next area, which is, all right, how long, you know, well, Clint has 2 questions, or Travis. When will the letters be issued, and when is the deadline
For the letters.
for the proposals to be returned?
Right.
So when we discuss that, which I guess is next, that ought to be done with with the idea of what the timeline continues out beyond that for public for public discussion before before there's a decision made on how to bring people together and which people to bring together. Okay? So I'm open for thoughts about.
The
Well,
issue,
I
the
could-
issue,
The question is, the issue
This
question
week.
is to you.
I mean, these adjustments you guys have made tonight, if everyone's comfortable with them, we can have them done tomorrow. I mean, if it's just these minor kind of tweaks, we can get this out this week. I'm very confident in saying that. The question is, I know Mark, you made the point earlier that, 4 weeks might not be long enough. I think, Councilman Circus, you just made the observation, the more time we give the response, the less time you have to react. I think that math is exactly right.
I mean,
If it's a month, I mean, we're not asking for a whole lot of detail. I think that just seemed appropriate, and I think in our mind, we were thinking October 31st. I don't even know what day of the week that is. We give people 6 weeks-ish, and then you guys could evaluate come November, December. But again, there's no magic, there's no science, there's not a lot of thought behind that, other than a few weeks seems appropriate, but that's completely up to you guys. Thank you.
I think a November 1, October 31 date is
reasonable.
is reasonable, yeah.
I do too. I mean, the thing is like some people are just going to be last minute no matter what. So if you just keep pushing the date back, I mean, I think 6 weeks is totally reasonable.
We have a November 6th regular meeting. If we were to do the end of October, and that way maybe things could be on that agenda for November 6th. And what we have on that agenda right now is the budget adoption. That's all that's on there at the moment. Of course,
And my guess is the work session after that's probably pretty
the
open too.
work session is November 13th.
And that's open, I'm guessing? I don't remember. I
Right,
mean,
it's totally open. There's
So
no
that would give
topic.
you a little bit of time 2 meetings in a
So-
row to talk about it.
The end of October appears to be a pretty good time frame.
Yep. So, I mean, we'll have time to think about this, but if we want to use, Alyssa, your concept of a of a fair, science fair, then what
You almost need like to have
Well-
people, we're gonna have
Well,
responsive presentations.
I mean, a thought, something just occurred to me that we should add into the letter that, I don't know, finalists or whatever, will be asked to make a public presentation in a format to be determined. So that people recognize that they're gonna have to come in and, and talk to people.
In the first 2
But I
weeks of
really do
November.
think that we have to have a measure in place before you get to that public presentation part to really limit the
Well,
amount
yeah,
of.
we should limit down to some number, some
Right.
reasonable number, or maybe the number is a group of organizations that appear to have some complementary means that would seem to work together or fit together in a building. I don't know, something to that effect.
Let me ask Clint the question. Are we thinking this letter going out that we would have a lot of people?
We don't know.
You know, the
Yeah, I know we don't know, but I'm saying, I'm just giving you a
Well,
10.
quick question.
I mean,
Because
the example
in
we've
a-
used.
In a 4-week period of time, we're almost at the end of September as it is right now.
Right.
We're talking about a 4-week period.
no, 5 weeks. You're 10.
Okay, excuse me, 5 weeks. It's still,
5.5
it's not,
weeks to be.
it's not even a whole lot of time to, I don't know what kind of interest is even out there if somebody wants to commit to a building like this. I don't know.
Well, there's only one way to
5
find
weeks.
out.
Well, no, of course there's only one way to find out, but I was just asking.
I would
Clint
set the over-under at
that-
10.
Yeah, you had the over-under on your table. and
Yeah,
size.
I won that one, but this one's
Okay.
set at 10.
So,
Well, let me throw something out to my fellow counselors. How would you feel if we if we posted this in the newspaper. Okay, I mean, it certainly gets out within the Valley community. And since we don't know, we don't know who we don't know about. If we're trying to create a list.
I
you
don't
know.
think, I don't think that's the problem. You could put it on TV, you could put it on radio, whatever means you could get out there in a 4 or 5 week period of time, the better we all are to get it out publicly,
'Kay.
correct?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, so I mean, newspaper to whatever one of the newscasters could say, hey.
I'm sure the journalists behind us will
we
be
have
making
journalists.
sure it's on the
We have
front
two
page
journalists
tomorrow.
in the room right now. They're already-
10,000
I
square
can smell the
feet.
wood burning right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
But I mean, between all those methods, we will do our best to get this out there.
To answer your question, Bob, I think that's a good idea. But I do.
Okay. So I'm going to summarize. I think I'm at a point where we can summarize where we are. So we have the concept. Well, we have a letter of interest with some changes to be made. We have an issue date of Wednesday, September 20th or before.
This week, yes.
Yeah. And we have a deadline for the return proposals of October 31st
Just say November 1st.
or November 1st. I don't care. November 1st
It
is
just
fine.
looks better as
It's a-
another month.
Okay, November 1st.
October 31st is kind of scary.
Halloween, huh? And,
Mischief.
Well, and I don't want to be all nerdy, but if we do it on the 30th, that's the Monday, I think, then that week gives us a couple days. If we do have it on the packet for the 6th, it gives us 2 days to get the packet together.
Okay. So you're saying the date being what?
The 30th, October 30th. That's a Monday, that gives the people the weekend to finish it up. That gives us a couple days if we do put it on the packet for the 6th to prepare something for review. I don't know what that would look like.
okay, October the 30th. And,
But that last section, the evaluation section, well, not the last one. It says the committee will recommend to the town council letters of interest to be considered.
that should just, that sentence
change that.
comes out.
Okay.
Well, we'll come up with I'll have to find my note, but the generic language is along the lines of finalists will be asked to make a presentation in a format to be determined or something along those lines.
But probably within the first 2 weeks in November, right?
Yeah, again, I'm trying to leave it generic, but yeah, understanding your guys' timeline, you might say that work session should be the
15th?
15th of November. That might be the time you want to hear it. I mean, I think it's going to depend a little bit on what comes in, how many come in.
Right.
You might want to comb through them and throw out 5 and look at 5. Well, I think the theme just being keep it generic for now and see what happens.
Okay.
But if we are going to have some sort of committee, I mean, don't we have to be like thinking about that now?
Well, I mean, I think we can take that word out, committee. I mean, right now, it's
No, but I'm saying when you get all of these, in order to like look at them and narrow it down, that's just going to be us.
that's up to you guys. I mean, that's,
And then you kind of throw it out to the community to sort of look at the top, let's say 5, and say, give us feedback on these 5.
Yeah,
that
we
what
could
we're
do it
saying?
that way. We could do it that way. Makes sense.
to get
I
this.
just feel like to get a committee and to put out a request and have
Yeah.
people apply, I mean, that's going to take so long.
Right.
Okay.
I agree. I mean, I do like your idea of, we can look at the top 5 and we can have a public meeting where everybody can come in and look at these and talk to us and ask questions and provide their input.
Mhm. Okay.
I don't know if it's worthwhile, but we have a lot of boards, voluntary boards. And if there's a way to get some of these boards involved, you actually have a board appreciation dinner coming up early October. If there's a way to get some of those people involved in some of the boards that could.
I think
That-
once we narrow it down, it'll be important to have like the FAB look at it, make
Right,
sure it's
right.
practical. I mean,
I think some of our voluntary boards are a good avenue, sounding boards.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Clint, you comfortable with direction?
Yep,
All
thank
right.
you.
So let's put this one away. We'll move on to the marijuana legislation community feedback tool.
Hmm.
I'm gonna just jump on this right quick for Travis, but the last time, the last work session, the council asked for an opportunity to create a methodology to receive feedback. We talked about an opportunity for written, get that feedback one way or the other in writing. And so what we've developed, Travis developed, was a methodology that'd be electronic, that people could hopefully keep it simple. The thought process behind it was really two basic questions. Would you be for legalization or not? And then question number 2, why or why not? And, you know, people could be and then the real critical part, I think, is that it would not be anonymous. We would ask for people's names and addresses so that you guys could understand who is saying it and whose opinions you were receiving, and evaluate it with that. It's not, this is not designed to be a scientifically valid or statistically valid survey in any ways. This is just an opportunity for input. And it's what we understood to be what the council wanted the next step to be, to do that. Once that input was received, then you guys could take that and decide on what next steps would be.
Okay, any thoughts?
I got
Lisa?
thoughts.
Go ahead.
Well, my first thought was that so it basically asked one question, and the other question's more of a comment. I talked to Clint about this today. It bothered me because I feel like it lumped all the different uses under Amendment 64 in one question. So if I were asking it, I would want to say, should Snowmass consider permitting any of the following allowed uses of marijuana as provided in Amendment 64? Check all that apply. Retail, manufacturing, cultivation, testing, none of the above, all of the above. Because I feel like you have to separate those things out.
I have the same question.
Yeah, I mean, but someone might be like, I'd be fine with all of them. But if you're not fine with all of them, or you're fine with none of them, at least you have the opportunity to pick and choose.
You would know,
Right.
you would know clearly what people were interested in and what they weren't.
Right, because someone might be like, I don't want cultivation here, but a retail shop would be fine.
Yep.
So that's was sort of my thought. And then question 2, where it says, what else would you like to tell town council about marijuana establishments in Snowmass Village? I mean, that to me was just a really funny question. I mean, that should not, I mean, I think it basically should be an elaboration of what their answer is to number 1. You know, because this is just like, I mean, who knows what kind of answer someone's going to put in that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we wrote it that way. I mean, that's why we're looking for feedback. What do you want to see?
So that was my comments. I don't know what anybody else thinks. Well, I know what Bob thinks, but.
My comments were to get a little more detail as to what they're interested in beyond what you're saying. Did you mention medical?
Well, I just went with the ones that were specified in that
Yeah,
question.
we should ask medical.
Which
too.
was retail, manufacturing, cultivation, testing.
And we could add
Good
medical.
catch, Bill.
What'd you
Go
say?
ahead, John.
Is there an issue?
No, I would add the word sales,
Yeah.
retail sales.
So my
medical sales,
questions would
Retail's
have
in
been,
there.
No,
Should
retail
we-
sales.
Sales.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't even mind seeing one question that says, you know, what would you be in favor of? Retail marijuana sales, or retail marijuana sales that aren't on a street level or on a pedestrian level,
That's good.
or the same for medical.
Well, basically, it's like if we did open it to marijuana sales in the village, you're asking them where would they want to see it, not on a ground floor level. Is that what you're saying?
How about question 2 being, what else would you like to tell the council about where, you know, marijuana established locations, or where, if there were, where should they be?
And have
Yeah, and maybe, maybe it could be.
So if we allowed them, where
Yeah.
should they be?
The beginning of the survey says it's not anonymous.
Right.
Right, it's not.
Right.
He said that.
I know, I know, but I'm saying, I'm wondering if that's gonna stop people from
Well,
taking.
I have thought of that, and, because I do think that there's a stigma attached to publicly supporting marijuana, or can be, and some people feel that way.
Right. I don't know if.
We're not gonna
So-
publicly,
No,
we're not
but,
gonna publish
so
these, I mean.
but the question
No.
really, John, is there, if someone were to ask for an open records thing of this, they'd get everybody's name, would it tie into their, the answers to their questions?
I don't think so. I think you can separate out that information, the demographic and the personal information.
So if that were the case, then I wouldn't have a problem. Matter of fact,
And the questions don't have anybody's name on them. Oh, the last one does.
the last one just asked for name, you know. But as long as, but as long as all you require is general information, like, you know, there were so many yeses and so many nos, and this is the list of people who filled it out. To me, that's still maintains an individual's privacy as to how they answered the question.
Okay.
You don't look convinced, Clint.
I mean, can we make it optional?
No, we shouldn't.
What you were trying to avoid last time, and I mean, again, I'm not unopinionated, was you didn't want to have a public hearing where somebody stood up and said, yes, do it, and somebody stood up and said, no, do it. And when they stand in front of you, you know who's talking, and that was the logic, was if, you know, this is not this is hopefully not something where you're counting votes or you get 10 on one side and
Right.
300 on the other side. Hopefully you're taking opinions, and you know where the opinions are coming from, and you're able to weigh them whether you want to go forward or not. And so it's not 200 versus 100 or 10 versus 7 or anything like that. And that was the logic, besides saying, here's who's saying what. So you could say, you know, Jim Smith is very much against this for these very good reasons, and Jane Doe is very much for it for these very good reasons, and you could use that in your evaluation.
It also provides kind of a good security check, making sure, I mean, the survey is already designed that it will limit responses per device, right? So you can only submit it one time. But if you have to submit your name and address on each one, we can also confirm that they're real people.
Yeah.
That
There's some validation for.
Well, even if you do it from, you know, individual addresses, if there's 100,000 that come in from greater Denver,
Right.
that's not really what you want to hear from. You want to hear from your
Right.
constituents.
That's right.
I think your idea, Bob, of separating the names, so in other words, if it isn't, the survey runs in a way that the answers are not connected to the names, but they are connected to the place of residency, you're getting, still use the names to validate it, but what you're not taking comments from everybody in the country who happens to get on
Correct.
this
Right.
website.
And I think that'll be important to note on the survey.
Right.
Because I think people who are against it are very happy to put their name down, and those people who might be for it, kind of like coming out of Prohibition, you know, they're like, oh, they're a little gun shy. So you
I,
want to
um,
get their opinion, but you don't want to publicly, you know, you don't want to embarrass them. I'm just saying we should make sure that it's clear on the survey.
Well,
I agree. I think it's still a very sensitive subject,
so
right?
I would
Yeah, but I mean, you're gonna
suggest,
change the law and make it the law of the village.
I understand what
Shouldn't you
you're
have
saying.
to stand up and say
So no.
one way or the other?
I would,
Or did they elect you to make that decision?
I would suggest in the paragraph, you know, that, please note paragraph, that paragraph be changed around a little bit to say, each submission will require a valid respondent name and address to be considered. The submissions will be used in the decision-making process, period. Because
Yeah.
we've just dealt with the issue of public records, okay? I don't think we need to include it here because that throws up, that creates an issue in people's minds that we've just more or less taken care of in terms of the privacy portion of a public record search. So I don't want to create a concern or an anxiety in somebody who might want to fill this out because we said something about public records. How do you feel, John?
I'd like to do research.
On the,
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go that direction, I wanna be able to give you a written memo that says, this is how it will apply under Cora.
fair enough. Okay,
I don't wanna go by the seat of my pants on that one.
okay. I mean, we don't have to get this out this week and.
Yep.
Right?
We have
I-
a year for this.
We
I
can,
had another question.
we can draft, we can make whatever changes you guys suggest tonight, and then bring it back with John's legal interpretation.
Mhm.
When you say on this thing, it says, "The town council would like your feedback before making a decision to allow or permanently prohibit marijuana establishments." Do you use the word establishments? I mean, when it could be these other things? I mean, establishment, I feel like, is like a storefront.
I would use license.
Okay. So we should change that.
Okay.
My other question is, do we want any other information, like household information?
Like what?
Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting, a lot of the feedback we've received is from sort of a specific contingency of the community. And I'd kind of be interested to know, like, are we hearing from people that have kids in this community? Are we hearing from single people that are just here to have a good time? Like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me.
I mean, the demographics you have in here are the same ones we used for the community survey. That's where they came from. If you want something more detailed, we can add
Well,
it.
I'm just wondering. I mean, because I just feel like,
Would you want to put age in?
what's that noise?
Oh, what you're really designing is an election, so why not just have an election? The only people that vote are registered here, and their votes are anonymous, and you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm pro, I'm against, and I don't want people to know about it. Just put a ballot question out. I mean, it seems like, to me, you're turning yourselves in knots, but do whatever you want. We'll accommodate whatever you want, guaranteed. But really, then all those factors don't matter.
Well, team?
I think we have time to think about this.
Well, I think, you gotta be 21 to fill out the survey, right?
You do?
Who said?
But you only need to
I
be
think
18 to vote.
To fill out this, we'd take, if you got a name and an address, we'd take it from you.
Yeah, you can.
We don't have age in here. You have to be civically minded enough to pay attention and get the emails and know that it's out there, but,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's,
Oh, it'll spread like wildfire that this is your tool to decide, and you'll get,
It's not our tool to
Voter
decide, it's our
responses.
tool to get feedback.
pardon?
It's our tool to get feedback.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, when you originally discussed this concept, whether we hit it or not, this was not to be, at least it was just gonna be an opportunity to get input and insight and not to have it be 200 for and 300 against or anything along those lines. It was just supposed to be, here's the concerns that are out there, here's the proponents' positions and the opponents' positions kind of thing. They could be summarized one way or the other. Then you guys could use that information to make, as John points out, are you gonna take it forward to a vote? You're gonna just outright prohibit? You're gonna outright allow? Those are all options before you.
So what do your notes show for the questions you're gonna add?
Well, I know that we're gonna break that first question down into, you know, 4 different or 5 different options. And then
Adding in, what'd you say?
medical,
Medical.
Medical.
and that's all I mean, that's the one that I know there was consensus on. And then I don't know if there's anything else besides that.
Well, I think we talked about changing question 2. And Bill brought up the whole point about, you know, if it were permitted, I don't know how you,
But again, do you
Where-
want, I mean, we can do all those questions, we can get very detailed, and I'll tell you, we had 2 versions of this. We had one that had probably 20 questions like that, and then one that was generic, and I flipped the coin and said, let's go generic,
Well,
which I was wrong. But really what I thought the goal was, do you want it or not? And if the answer comes back yes, then you guys can come back and get all that detail and work through those efforts. And if the answer comes back no, then you don't have to get into all that. That was the logic. It doesn't,
So we are deciding on a survey.
well, feedback.
Feedback, okay.
well, regardless, question 2 to me is just weird. Like, what else would you tell the town council about marijuana establishments in Snowmass Village? And first of all, it's more than establishments, as John pointed out.
Well, again, we're just trying to use English, not legalese, because everybody knows what an establishment is and nobody knows what a license is.
I know, but if I read that, I would be like, oh, you're just talking about retail fronts?
Okay. I mean, again, that's why it's before you to tell us what you want it to say.
I mean, basically, number 2 is them elaborating on why they selected what they selected for question 1.
That was the thought.
But I don't feel like that number 2 that you have written does that. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, I think it should sort of reference question 1, you know, basically, can you elaborate on why you chose what you chose for question 1? Not in those words.
Okay.
That's kind of the way I look at it, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, and there's gonna be some people, the people that own shops are gonna wanna give you a whole ton of information, and there's gonna be some people that just wanna say yes, or some people that just wanna say no. And we were trying to accommodate that whole range. But
Okay. See what we got.
we'll come back with a version 2.0.
come back with version 2.0, okay.
I think this is gonna spread like wildfire anyway.
Okay, so if I can get this thing to close. All right, any reports?
I have a court meeting coming up next week, September 28th, so nothing else to report from my end.
Okay,
I would like to just bring up the EOTC meeting that we just had last week, and the fact that I did not appreciate a history lesson by one of the county commissioners, but that's all I'll say. And anyway, I'll leave it at that.
okay. I just want to say how much fun it was watching all these old cars running around the town last Thursday. It was a hoot. And I hope that I wasn't here for the wine, the you know, the Rotary's wine show, but I hope it went well and that there was a good crowd. I guess the other point is just an update that Mark Fuller at RUAPA has sent a letter off to the Secretary of the Interior, again requesting Bureau of Reclamation support for aquatic nuisance species, boat inspection, decontamination funding. And if anybody would like to see the letter, I'd be happy to send it to them.
I think you sent.
Did I send you that letter?
You copied us,
Okay.
yes.
Bill?
I was a little nervous going into the whole car race. I really wasn't sure what we were gonna get there. But I just know how hard it was for the bicycles to make the turn down at the bottom of the hill, but they did great. I don't think there were any incidents, were there?
Nothing that we couldn't accommodate.
Yeah. So anyway, nice job.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, the EOTC meeting was interesting. It was a huge shift from kind of brick and mortar to being totally dependent on technology to, you know, to solve our entrance issues. There needs to be a combination of both. Aspen seems to be in denial that the Castle Creek Bridge is going to need to be replaced. I don't think they have a plan in place. I don't know how you're gonna replace the bridge and keep traffic flowing at the same time, so I think they're gonna need to learn some lessons from Glenwood, and hopefully, we can encourage some political will to, move the process forward.
Melissa?
Well, I think our last meeting, the special meeting, I don't know if we mentioned the 9/11 Memorial Walk. I don't remember talking about it.
Oh, you know,
But
right.
it was really nice. I mean, we were all there.
We were all
Yeah.
there.
We were all there.
Marky couldn't be there, but we were all there, and it was really nice. And I thought the little gathering they had at the park afterwards was great, and it was just nice. I mean, there wasn't a ton of people there, but there was enough, and I thought it was very nice.
It was.
And they did a great job putting it
They did a
together.
great job.
So I went to RAFTA for Marky on Thursday. It was a long day, last Thursday. And they gave us some information which Marky wanted me to have printed and given to you guys. But basically, one is, it's several pages. It's the Integrated Transportation System Plan, and it's all of the alternatives. And it breaks them down by types of alternatives and funding and costs and all of that stuff and notes. And so that's interesting just to kind of look through the different alternatives. And then the other thing they gave us, they had a guy, consultant, whose job is to do polls and figure out, you know, if RAFTA wanted to put something on the ballot for, not this year, but the next year, like how that would work and how it would look and if it would pass and what kind of levy they're talking about. Are they talking about 5 mil or less? And so they basically took the system plan and did it with a 5 mil levy, and it shows all the different things that could be funded, you know, based on that 5 mil levy. So Marky wanted me to make sure you guys all had a copy, so I am making sure you guys all have a copy.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Just some light reading
you,
when you
Marky.
have nothing else going on.
I can't imagine Marky's sitting in Hawaii.
Reading this.
It was actually the consultant they had that does all of the polling stuff. It was really interesting to hear how they go about figuring out if something is gonna survive a ballot and what the statistics are. And I mean, it was really interesting. I actually enjoyed it.
Good, that's great.
And the good news out of the meeting is that people, on the whole, seem to be satisfied with the bridge. That it's going well, and that's good news.
That's good news. It's good news.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Travis, John, Clint, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, thank you.
Good?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
I know John wants to get back and watch Dancing with the Stars.